Exactly. I get all, everything covered.
Just wait till John takes it.
Just at least I think the first one.
Make sure he
I
gets
just did
it.
both up here. I'm gonna give you more time. I'm This is a good idea. I didn't even do this for this reason. Now I got a little.
I switched to the county,
Yeah, the camera is on now because it's after 6. It has a delay though. I'm still across the room.
Could you see if you hear yourself talking?
Definitely. Yeah.
That's the recorder up there.
Yeah. I believe it is. That's kind of just what I assume.
Something. Yeah, they have to finish their. We'll get it.
I believe they're using it actually to tally up like the election results or something along with paperwork or something from them up there.
I think that one is like, what's it behind you?
Here's
That used to be blocked.
I gotta let the gap in between the cables so you can get out.
like a baby. Yeah, we've been. Yeah, my Ryan, she goes to Johnson.
Yeah, he's here, Brian.
My 3-year-old's authorized.
You're gonna have to hold some of my resume. I'm gonna think you want the meetings upstairs. You have more comfortable chairs.
Yeah, I'm good. I'll see you.
Now, if we can take the chairs downstairs, we may have some.
I like not having the computer, the laptop in the way, or just hands-free.
I don't think the camera can see me, so I can act up.
I can hear you.
I'm gonna be back here making hand signals.
But I did think.
Call the meeting to order. Let's rise and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, please read in the certification of compliance.
The time, date, and location of this meeting was published in the Asbury Park Press and posted on the bulletin board in the office of the Township of Lakewood at least 48 hours in advance. The public has the right to attend this meeting, and reasonable comprehensive minutes of this meeting will be available for public inspection. This meeting meets the criteria of the Open Public Meetings Act.
Roll call.
Mr. Grunberger. Mr. Garfield.
Yes.
Mr. Franklin.
Yes.
Mr. Sable. Mr. Flansbaugh.
Here.
Mr. Herzl.
Here.
Mr. Renner.
Here.
Mr. Isaacson. Mr. Grappos. Here. Mr. Meyer.
Here.
Chairman, just so you and the public is aware, there is a webcam video from this feed up here that goes to the website, making a recording of tonight's meeting. There's also a microphone in the middle of the room that does pick up pretty much every sound in here, so keep in mind that no conversations are private, and that everything that you have will be made part of the record for this meeting for tonight.
When you come up front, you should speak loud, that should be, everything should be recorded. Okay, the confirmation recording says everything's working,
Yep,
it's on.
everything's on.
Okay, swearing of professionals.
Do you swear affirm testimony will give before this board with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Record will reflect Mr. Vogt has taken the oath.
Okay, memorization resolutions.
We
We
have
have four.
4 resolutions. Mr. Grunberger and Mr. Sable were not here for those, but they're not here tonight. Mr. Renard, I believe you either stepped down or were not here just on the very first one.
Yes.
So the first is SD 2324, minor subdivision.
So moved.
Move, have a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Second is 2325, minor subdivision.
Move.
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
SD 2282, major site plan.
Move.
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
And SD 2266, extension of a minor subdivision.
Second.
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
And let the record reflect that Mr. Sable is here.
Ally, is there any change to the public agenda, the public hearing agenda?
There are no changes.
Let's go on to number one.
First on tonight's agenda is application SD 2314 made by David Herzog. This is a major subdivision to create 8 lots on West County Line Road. I believe this is the one that came in with the concept application originally, so it may be familiar to the board.
Yeah, we heard the board already once on this application. No?
You may have heard the entire version, Chairman, of the same property.
Yeah, there was a version, I think, that maybe didn't go through, and then there was a concept plan.
This is Alan Weiss, attorney for the
Thank you.
applicant. This is a continued application. We were here over the winter, and we agreed to come back before the board because there were requests among them to submit a traffic report, which we've done. We were also requested to submit another stormwater management report, which we've done, so here we are.
Okay, Mr. Weiss, I think we're going to start the application again, because if it's a continued application, only members who were here at the original application can vote.
Okay,
So or we start again, or unless everybody was here. Or I would refer to Mr. Jackson on
It looks
that.
like, I'm sorry to interrupt, on March 20th, we had in attendance Mr. Sable, Mr. Flansbaum, Mr. Herzl, Mr. Renner, Mr. Isaacson, and Mr. Meyer, which does not make 5, given that Mr. Isaacson is not here. So you can either hold and see if Mr. Isaacson arrives, or you can restart the entire testimony, if that's with permission.
Or you could go forward and then the members who don't hear the testimony can listen to it on tape, and we can vote on a later date.
I think we could do it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would recommend you start from,
Yeah, we'll start it over again.
Especially, it was a few months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we could do it quickly, because I don't think there's much here that would be in contention.
Is there any opposition to?
Yes,
There was opposition.
Lots of.
There is opposition to this.
yes, he said it was.
No, but there is opposition to us starting over it. Why are we not, the board gets
One
to
second.
rehear the entire testimony after my cross-examination?
well, then, okay, that's a good point.
State your
There-
name for the
there-
record.
Sorry, Michael York, Nova Jersey Jacobus, I represent, we'll just stick with Ralph Lax, one of the objectives.
Do me a favor, could you come forward, Mr.
Sure.
York, please? I want to make sure the recording gets
Yes.
recorded. That's right there.
My problem with starting over is I had an opportunity to beat up Mr. Flannery once. In theory, Mr. Flannery can now correct his testimony, which he should do. I would do the same thing. I personally, if I was the applicant's attorney, would love to start over and have a new shot at this, knowing what Michael York is going to ask me. You're giving him that opportunity then. That's a problem for me. It means he just gets to start over brand new and fix anything that maybe was wrong.
I just think it's fair to start, if not everybody was here, we don't have a
Well,
quorum.
that doesn't mean we have to decide it tonight. He can, there's a quorum to conduct the meeting, he can provide the testimony, and then the board can vote when either the members who are here, who hear it tonight, listen to the previous tape, or the members who were not here tonight, who heard the last one, listen to the tape, and then from tonight. So I agree with Mr. York. I had lost track of that there was opposition, the case is in. So, I think we should continue it and then vote on a different night when the missing member can pick up by listening to the transcript.
We definitely cannot vote tonight, but even if Mr. Isaacson comes in the middle,
Right.
we don't have a quorum
Well, if
right
they'd
now.
like to wait and see if Mr. Isaacson is coming, we can put it off and take the next application. That's-
Do that too. You could just take a different order and see if Mr. Isaac, is he supposed to come?
I don't know, I can call him.
It's really difficult, if you're not gonna start over with testimony, it's very difficult. I don't remember this application.
It was 3 months ago.
So I really like to hear testimony from the beginning.
Well, but can I say something? I have two points, really. Number one, I object to his comment that our expert got beat up. He wasn't beat up. He didn't go to the hospital.
Everybody in the audience, please be quiet. Everything's being recorded.
I don't remember him going to the hospital after the meeting. Okay, so first of all, I object to the word beat up. He was cross-examined, I think he did a fine job. That's number one. Number two, whether or not we technically say that we're starting over again, I think it's perfectly within our purview and fair to everybody that we give a very brief sum up of what the application is. And that's what I would go with.
I have no
Yeah,
problem with that.
Okay.
That's
You
fine.
can review where you were at, but that doesn't mean that we have enough members to vote the case.
Understood as well. So if I could just huddle with him for 1 second, we might say, let's go number two.
Mr. York, would you help me slide this out so you guys have something to put your papers on at the end?
I guess I should go over here, it would be easier.
Thank you. Perfect.
So we'd like to move forward.
Now,
Now,
Knowing that there won't be a vote tonight.
correct.
Why?
Because they can put in their testimony, and then we can vote at a later time.
So at the next meeting, we'll just have a vote? We're not getting more testimony?
Yes. And then the members who have caught up by listening to the tape, either...
That's fine. I just don't want to hear testimony tonight and hear testimony again.
Mr. Jackson, they're gonna give an overview of everything that was said at the last meeting. Can we vote tonight?
No, because,
We have to hear every detail.
right, because the decision is based on testimony, and you will recall, once you get up to speed on this,
Right.
you might have had an impression based on the demeanor and credibility of the witnesses, how they answered, et cetera, so...
I remember this application.
So why don't we just let Mr. Weiss,
Mr. Weiss, right.
Mr. Weiss give just get us caught up, give us a summary of what we heard last
So I
time.
asked you before, I remember this application, and you said it was just,
no, that was my fault. I was thinking of a different
right,
application,
okay.
which is coming later.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Weiss.
Thank you.
1 second first. I usually go to engineer. Terry, do you have anything to go through on the report?
Are we starting over, or?
No, no,
No,
you're good.
continuation, brief
All right,
overview,
then.
review.
I believe we previously had testimony and decisions on submission waivers, is that correct? All right, so continuing on, and I'm reading from our May 10th letter, Chairman. Under zoning, variances are required for several of the properties regarding minimum lot width. We have the proposal is between 78 feet and 86 feet. I believe that's the only variance relief. And under design waivers, a design waiver was required, or is required, from sidewalk along the west side of the cul-de-sac. I'm sure we'll have testimony on that. I believe that's
Yeah.
the only relief? Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
So what this is in a nutshell is an 8-lot subdivision for single-family detached residences on an approximate 3-acre piece of land that currently has one house on it along County Line Road. The applicant proposes to build one cul-de-sac road to service these 8 new homes. We have one variance that we're requesting for lot width. At the previous meeting, the board considered and granted submission waivers, and they're contained in Terry's report on section 1A. At the time that we were before the board the last time, the applicant agreed to construct a fence along the westerly sideline of the new road, which adjoins an existing residential neighborhood where the houses would be at the rear. At the last meeting, our engineer, Mr. planner rather, gave us an overview of where this development is located, and that's contained on a presentation board that is marked A1 to my right, and it's shaded in orange, so that you all can see that.
Yeah.
that was the substance and an overview of what this application is all about.
Just in equal time, maybe we can just very briefly have Mr. York tell us what his issues are and where he thinks the deficiencies are in the application.
Does he have to be sworn in?
Mr. York, no, Mr. York's an attorney.
No, Mr. Flannery?
He's sworn in from last time. I can swear him in again.
Let's swear him in again. He could
Do
be.
you swear from testimony you give before this board, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Brian Flannery, Jackson, New Jersey, licensed professional engineer and professional planner.
Okay, so you heard from Mr. Weiss with the overview. Mr. York, can you briefly tell the board who you represent and what the issues are?
Yeah, I represent Ralph Lax, a number of the other neighbors, rather than Mr. Jackson giving me the opportunity, and thank you. I won't bore you. We have an engineer and a traffic engineer, and they'll testify and they'll provide their own testimony. I won't bore you with my opinion of the case. Mr. Weiss, go ahead.
So this application, we resubmitted plans, as Mr. Weiss indicated. We added a fence along the westerly property line, and we made the...
Mr. Weiss, that's Mr. Isaacson. He missed your 5 minutes of testimony.
Oh, that's perfect.
He hasn't missed any testimony.
Just the summary, I said.
Yeah, he just missed
Middle
the
here,
attorney's,
We just started an application, and you were the fifth one who was here on the last application.
Do you have any, Mr. York, where is he?
I'm right here. I
Any
have no
objection
objection to
to
Brian
going from-
continuing on the last 2 seconds.
So,
Thank
just for the record now, we've changed the complexion of the meeting.
Well,
Yeah.
there are enough members that have heard the first half of this, so if you can possibly get a vote tonight, we'll see how it goes.
Yep. Thank you.
So at the March meeting, we marked sheet 18 of the tax map as A1. The subject property, a 3-acre lot, lot 62, is colored in orange. All the lots on sheet 18 that do not comply with the ordinance were highlighted in blue, and you see there's quite a few of them. Also at that meeting, we marked A2, which showed the 8 cul-de-sac lots that were requested. At the time, there were questions about the site triangle easement, and in red, we had marked on where an AASHTO site triangle would be, where a county site triangle might be. Since that, a AASHTO site triangle was added to the plans, as well as a fence along the western property line, and the pavement was widened from 30 feet to be 32 feet, consistent with the board typically asked for. The revised plan that was submitted, I don't think we have any other applicants' exhibits, so I would mark that as A3, and it looks very similar to A2, but with minor tweaks that are brought out in the RVE report. I also, because I figured we weren't going to have a screen here, we had looked at the Google Earth for the property at the last meeting, because there were questions on Cedar Row and Parkside Drive. If any of the buildings were near the property lines, I can mark this as A4. It's just, I downloaded it off Google. And it shows what was discussed last time, is that most of the buildings are close to the road. There are a couple pools in the backyard. So, in Terry's report, he points out on page 2 that the road was widened to a 32-foot cartway, consistent with Lakewood's normal standards. And as I pointed out, there was also a fence and a site triangle easement added. At that prior meeting, we went through the proofs of why we should be entitled to the variance. And the variance that we're asking for is, of these 8 lots, all of them conform with area. One of them conforms completely. 6 of them are 86 feet wide instead of 90 feet wide. And the one near the road, after dedication, is 78 feet wide. It's a 5-foot dedication, so it was 80-some feet. We're giving the county 5.2 feet, which makes that 78 feet. My testimony at that time was that The relief that we're requesting, especially when you look at A1, is consistent with what the norm of this neighborhood is, and that it's de minimis in nature, and that the detriments, when I looked at the negative criteria, the impact on the neighbors was negligible. We did have a conversation at that meeting with respect to the particular hardship of this lot. The width that we have, 200 feet, in order to develop our 12 lots, we're either going to have a road on the west side or a road on the east side. If it's on the west side, the people on the west side aren't going to be happy. If it's on the east side, the people on the east side will be happy. We did, at that time, look at other permitted uses, and I could just go to the, I printed out the uses from the UDO, section 18-902E, for the R12 zone. Permitted uses, we have A, single-family houses, which is what the application is for. The question is whether it's 7, by right completely conforming, that are all going to be more than 12,000 square feet with no variances, so there'll be no blue on here, or 8. If someone thought that this was going to be developed as 1 or 2 houses, I think they're delusional. The other permitted uses are places of worship, and a 3-acre lot is probably larger than needed for a place of worship, but we also have public and private schools. 3 acres is perfect for a private school. And it's similar to other applications that we've done in town where everybody likes schools but not in their neighborhood. And you come in with residential and they don't want to grant variances. And then I come back and present another application for a school, and all the neighbors come out and say, we don't need the school there. It impacts us more than single-family homes. In addition to schools, campuses are permitted, and it's 3 acres, so it's the size for a campus, and child care centers are permitted. Looking in the ordinance to the specific sections on them, the public and private schools is section 18-906, and for buffer requirements from a non-residential district, it's 20 feet. So the neighbors would get a 20-foot buffer of leaving the existing trees. The campus is per ordinance number 209-53, approved back in September. And those restrictions are listed in section 18902H.
Mr. Flannery, if I can interrupt you, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding what the relevance of this is.
To show what other permitted uses could be built here, so that we compare the impacts of having 86-foot wide lots to having other uses that could be permitted there.
Thank you.
So the campuses are permitted, except in the DA1 Cedar Bridge redevelopment area, the M1 Industrial Park, the Airport Hazard Zone, the Open Space Zone, the Crystal Lake Preserve, the A1 or the PH Public Housing or Stadium Support Zones. In the R12 zone, they are permitted. And buffers for a campus in this zone refer to section 18-803 of the ordinance, which says a non-residential development, which when we look at a campus, there's going to be a residential component, there's going to be a school component. Non-residential development is required a 25-foot buffer. The buffer increased to 50 feet where it's adjacent to a residential single-family zone. So conceivably, any campus here, which allows 65-foot buildings, they would be 50 feet from the property. And the residential component of it would be required to provide at least 30 feet, which can be reduced to 15 feet if you provide a fence. The child care centers is permitted in accordance with section 18-900F, and it says centers for which a license is required from the New Jersey Department of Human Services pursuant to PL 1983 C492 shall be permitted use in all zoning districts. And the board remembers the one we did on County Line Road, where again, it was a piece of property that was narrow and deep, and it wasn't well suited for residential development. That's why it's my testimony that this is an appropriate use. It does impact the neighbors. We're providing a fence so that it mitigates the impact on the neighbors. But we're talking about predominantly 86-foot wide lots where 90 is required, and we're meeting the area. If you look in this block, 25 of the lots in our block do not meet the area. So we're providing all lots meeting the lot area. So back at, I guess we don't have to go through the, Mr. Jackson, do you think we should go through that, update the board members on the justification, municipal?
Positive, if you've covered the positive and negative, it would just be redundant for you to bring it up at this time. And your attorney can comment, the attorney representing the applicant, not your attorney, could make comments summarizing the testimony when it's time to vote. Mr. Flannery, you indicated that this is a revised plan.
Yes.
I'm looking at it. Could you just highlight for the board what the differences are? Again, the changes that you made.
Well, the main difference is that.
Do you have a site plan there on a board, or?
Yes. When you look at the two boards, they look the same. You're not going to see.
That's what I'm concluding. That's why I'm asking you to point it out.
Yep. If I move them real fast, you're not going to tell.
That's the wrong one.
Oh. Well, then it's easy to sit. What did they do? Change the orient?
Yeah, we have to turn it upside down.
No, I got it.
That's a different application.
I got a wrong board. Somebody else's. My board's over here. Okay. A2, which was submitted up here, A3 is down there. It's the same 8 lots, it's the same cul-de-sac. There were some tweaks in the lot areas here to get them 86, 86, and 86, whereas before they were a little different. The road was widened to 32 feet at the direction of the board. A fence was provided along the property line.
And the site triangle easement?
Site triangle easement was added to the plan. And additionally, of more major changes, what the objector said last time is the stormwater wasn't complete and the lighting wasn't complete, and how could he cross-examine someone on them if they weren't complete? So those have been submitted, and the stormwater management system and stormwater report were submitted.
Mr. Flannery, I believe an updated traffic report was also
Yes.
provided?
Yes.
I think that we were waiting on that. for quite
And
some time.
we have a traffic engineer, Scott Kennel, is here to discuss it.
Right now, on the board, all the properties marked in blue are undersized properties?
They're all variance properties.
What's the width on those properties?
Well, we have a lot of them in between Canterbury and Tanglewood that are 75s. We have, on the other side of Canterbury, 75s.
Brian, how old are those lots?
How old are those lots? They've been there a long time.
Canada is built in the 60s.
Right, but,
The white, the unmarked are fully conforming regular.
yes. that is
There's
correct.
more unmarked than marked.
That's right. At the time, I said there were 45%. When we look at just our block, 25 of them don't have the required area. So they're smaller than 12,000 square feet. All of ours have the required area, and the relief comes down to mostly 86-foot wide lots rather than 90-foot wide lots. And I'm a surveyor. I'm not going to see that when I drive down the street. I'm not going to see it. We did have a conversation, and somebody asked Mr. York, because we can do 7
Sure.
lots by right.
Conversations outside.
We can do 7 by right, and somebody asked Mr. York, if we do 1 less, is your client going to be okay? And of course he's not, because it's the same impact. Whether there's 7 houses in his backyard or 8 houses in his backyard, there's still houses in his backyard.
So to stick on that point, when you said that this lot there's a hardship with this lot, which I get.
Yes.
But why 7 versus 8? Why can't you just build without any
Well,
variances?
the justification that was given, and you did say up front that you don't remember back from March, and I can understand that.
I remember Mr. York. That I do remember.
We said it was a C2 variance, and a C2 variance, you have to balance the positive and negative criteria, and you have to show that the benefits substantially outweigh the detriments. So it was my opinion that there were virtually no detriments to having 8 rather than 7.
Actually, no detriment for who?
For the general public. Mr. York himself said to his client, it doesn't make a difference.
He said already he doesn't want it.
He doesn't want 7.
Didn't we mention also there was a reverse frontage issue?
Well, we talked about, and Mr. York brought that up, and I think perhaps he felt that was beating me up, but my recollection of it was a little bit different, that we discussed,
That's why you put the fence in.
yes, we
No
discussed
frontage.
that per the definition section of the ordinance, Lakewood defines a reverse frontage lot, a lot which fronts on 2 parallel streets and is not accessible from one of the parallel streets. And there was discussion at the time that these lots are accessible from the street. Well, now that we put a fence up, they're not. We could make them further less accessible by putting a note on the plan, which gets done all the time, no access permitted. We could, I called it a spike strip last time. Mr. Jackson wasn't thrilled with the terminology, where we leave 1 foot of
Dedicated to the township.
property along there, right, dedicated to the township, left in another lot, something that prohibits access. To me, the fence prohibits access. Nobody in the town, the implication was that this was gonna put the front yard setback on them. Nobody in the town is gonna come in to anybody on these lots and say, you need a front yard setback, because the record from the planning board is that these are reverse frontage lots. Access is prohibited by here, and per the definition,
Access is prohibited by what?
by the fence, we could prohibit it by a note, or we could
Well,
prohibit.
I don't know that putting, if you give it to the township, that could become part of the right-of-way. And I don't know that putting a fence would prohibit somebody from accessing
Well,
it. Let me
we've
finish.
done,
I think if you reserve that property, and if the board wants that done and restricted it, that could be done. If you kept that strip of property, you could stop people from crossing it to get to the road. The board might think it's better to have them to have access to that street. I don't know. I mean, that's, I don't know that that's something the board wants.
what we've done in Lakewood in the past is put a note on the map that's filed that says access to this road from these lots is prohibited. And by virtue of the note, it's prohibited. We're willing to do whatever the board wants to do.
Mr. Jackson, I think those neighbors do not want access to that road, because then they have reverse
We
frontage.
can accomplish that. I'm not sure the exact mechanism, but I know it can be accomplished.
Okay.
You can keep a strip of land, and you can keep it in ownership of the association, you can keep restricted. I don't know that a note on the plan is good enough, because that's not the note on the plan of the subdivision behind you, it's on this subdivision, but that could be accomplished. I have no doubt that we could accomplish stopping access from that road.
And one of the problems we had with this subdivision, and still have with the plans that are submitted, is that there's no sidewalk shown on this side. And we talked about it last time, and I heard loud and clear there's gonna be a sidewalk.
My note said you were going to provide sidewalk on both
Right.
sides.
So we're formally saying the applicant is gonna put sidewalk. And one way of doing that would be to put that sidewalk in its own separate lot with an easement that the town owns, that restricts, because now it's no longer part of the right-of-way, it's a separate sidewalk property. As Mr. Jackson says, that can be done. There's lots of ways to do it. The applicant is happy to do it any way that works for the board. Whether it's 7 or 8, it's the same situation. So that's an item that needs to be overcome, whether it's 7 or 8.
I just want to go back to my question for 1 second. So you don't have to show that there's a hardship in this?
That's correct. You have to show that the benefits substantially outweigh the detriments. So it's a balancing act. In my opinion, and Mr. York said it, so it seems like his opinion, whether it's 7 or 8 isn't the problem. The problem is houses in their backyard, and I understand that, I fully understand that. So there's either gonna be houses in their backyard, a school in their backyard, a school or a campus in their backyard. This property in Lakewood is not staying the way it is today.
Terry,
Let me, I'm sorry.
no, I'm trying to ask Terry, do you agree that those properties don't have frontage to the cul-de-sac if we leave a strip of land You feel comfortable, there's no frontage there?
If you left a strip of land, there would be no connectivity, to my knowledge, between the right-of-way and those properties.
So you would definitely consider those properties, the rear of their property?
In my engineering opinion, not being an attorney, yes.
Okay, and I think Mr. Jackson said the same thing.
Yeah, I think if there's a strip of land behind those homes, that would be their rear yard still.
And I would suggest that if we've just represented that we're gonna erect a sidewalk on that side of the road, what I would suggest, and I would, get from council, is to declare an easement solely for the use of a pedestrian sidewalk. That's not a right-of-way dedication. It would be strictly for, pedestrian movements, and that would also solve the problem and get the sidewalk where it needs to be in a legal manner. So that's what I would say to do.
So it's gonna look the same to everybody driving down the road. It's gonna look like a road with a sidewalk, but it's gonna accomplish the goal of having them for certainty, lots that they have a front yard and a rear yard.
Will there be a homeowners association for this?
No.
I'm trying to think
On the sidewalk, yes.
I'm just trying to think of who would own that property
Well,
with the sidewalk on it. Because you have to title it in somebody.
We would title it to the township.
Yeah, we could dedicate an easement to the township of Lakewood strictly for pedestrian use on the sidewalk.
I think his point is dedicating the easement is one thing, who's going to own the deed of the property? The easement could be the town,
Okay.
deeding the lot to the
Yeah, I
town.
think
We
if
were
you
gonna
give that
deed the
lot-
lot, we were gonna create a
So
separate
then
lot,
you wouldn't need
a sidewalk lot, right.
By an
Is
easement
that-
for
right.
sidewalk only.
Does the subdivision show a division of,
Won't you? You got some drainage in here that's on site that the township's not gonna take care of.
The plan would be to do as always, that the adjoining owners are responsible for the maintenance of the storm that's on the lot. The township, as Mr. Franklin points out, township gets a one-time maintenance fee for anything that's in the right-of-way. Anything that's off the right-of-way, the homeowners have to do it, and that gets spelled out in the approval, and the resolution compliance, and in the stormwater maintenance manual.
Question, Chairman, if I could.
Yeah.
Has there been any dialogue yet between your engineer and DPW?
No.
Okay. So if the board acts favorably, there's going to be a meeting with
Yes.
DPW?
Yes.
And the procedure is either DPW accepts what's on site, or they request modifications, or they say, no, we're not going to maintain it.
In which case, we
At
need to
that
come
point,
back
you're
to the
gonna need-
board and
right.
form a homeowner association.
Right.
We'd rather not form a homeowner association for 8 single-family lots. But if DPW says that's our only
But
choice,
those are the scenarios
Yes.
if the board
Correct.
acts favorably.
Mr. Jackson, we're creating on the sidewalk an undersized lot. They need variances on that, right?
all of these lots are dimensionally undersized, they're 86 feet, so.
So now we can have 9 lots. The lot of the sidewalk will be the 9th
Technically,
lot.
that
Well,
lot, yeah.
That's what I'm trying to, I
We
have a hard
to
time creating a lot just to own the sidewalk and just to create a barrier. I think that's cumbersome, and then who's going to pay the taxes on that lot? It'll eventually get sold in a tax sale.
we'll
Make
add
it-
that.
Can I
we'll
finish,
add that-
please? Can I finish, please?
One at a time, please.
And maybe this is where Mr. Flannery was going, but the proposed lot 6208, one way to accomplish that is to have their lot have a finger of property that goes all the way out to the
Exactly.
corner.
Yes.
Exactly.
And then that could be restricted as a, as.
Private ownership.
Right, that's,
Well, it'd be private ownership, but beyond that, there could be a deed restriction that would prevent crossing it.
And you can't sell it.
Right.
You can't sell
Right,
those off.
because you still have the deed
You
restriction.
have sidewalks on private property going all the way down the street.
Well, they typically,
Yes, with an easement.
With an easement.
To the township and the public.
we'd make the finger.
Sorry.
I have a question. Does Lakewood have a snow removal ordinance for private residences? Because if you're giving that sidewalk to that lot, that person is going to be
Yeah, a lot of
responsible.
shoveling.
Somebody
That's right.
that falls on that sidewalk, it's gonna be the homeowner's responsibility.
That's it.
Yes.
Where, I guess.
Yeah.
Got a steep discount.
The
on
homeowner
that.
that buys it, will know it.
It's gonna be their responsibility.
Yes. Yes.
I think it's, it's a little bit cumbersome, and the idea is to try to make
sure
it
there's
so
no
lots
double
55
frontage.
they're not double fronted, and, it's just an awkward layout, but it does accomplish, I think, preventing lot 39 through 5802 from getting access.
What about just the gate? Are you comfortable with that?
Well, if the gate's there, I don't know who owns and maintains that gate. They're just putting a gate then on the public right-of-way, because who would own, the street is in the public right-of-way. Imagine that right-of-way would then go from, all the way out to where the fence is. So you normally can't just run a fence along the street.
Regardless, they need a
Actually,
fence.
can't be within the front yard setback. They would need a variance.
Maybe if I could just come over here. I mean, this is tricky, because the right-of-way, I assume, goes all the way up to the property line.
Yes.
So you're running a fence then on the public right-of-way?
On the township property.
Well, it's public right-of-way, yes, township.
Once we do the strip that the sidewalk is in, then it's no longer on the right of way. It's along that whole portion.
That's why you're gonna need a homeowners association, because someone has to show them the sidewalks, and someone has to
Sidewalk
maintain the
breaks, I mean,
fence.
yeah, except, to me, we're creating this,
Well,
crazy type of
we gave in
situation.
on the sidewalks,
yeah.
we're giving in on the homeowner association.
I think the homeowners association creates a good mechanism. They can make it another lot. That does, to Mr. Herbel's point, that is another lot now on the subdivision that wasn't noticed for. I don't have a problem with that. If they have a catch-all and it is a board-directed change, it's as we go through this. Of course, we have to see what the opposition has to say about all this before we make any decision.
I think we should put on the record that it may be a variance.
But that would certainly be a variance to have like an association lot. Unless you want to have the association own the whole road.
No, I don't think the association is.
Just
Wait,
this.
so while you bring that up, I know Mr. Flannery mentioned the roads being widened to 32 feet, but at the last meeting, they also testified the right-of-way would be expanded to 50 feet, which is a standard township right-of-way. Has that been done as well?
The right of way is 50.
The plan dimensions it at 50 feet.
And one other thing you had mentioned was easement and shade trees to be provided along County Line Road. Was that done?
But that creates, making that right-of-way 50 feet, as well as making the sidewalk an association lot, requires somewhat of a miracle of loaves and fishes. Because where's that 50 feet? Then you can't have a 50-foot wide road. unless-
We're not gonna have a 50-foot wide right-of-way. We're gonna have a 46-foot wide right-of-way with a 4-foot sidewalk easement alongside of it. So the practical matter of it, it's the same thing as a 50-foot wide right-of-way, but for protective purposes of the neighbors, so that they don't get considered to be a front yard setback, it's a different configuration, which would be a de minimis exception for the RSI.
I would want to do this in consultation. How we set this up with the township. Now, Mr. Vo's the township engineer. I'd like to speak to the administrator or whoever would manage this to see what Lakewood thinks, what the governing body thinks of this whole.
We could
It's a
put a
homeowners
caveat,
association,
Chairman, if the board wants to act on a version of this, and that's an if, the approval could be conditioned upon review of the final road design by the Lakewood Engineering Department to ensure compliance.
That's what I think. And I'll point out, none of this has anything to do with the variances that they're requesting, whether it's 7 lots or 8 lots or 15 lots.
Just protecting the opposition.
It'll be the same issue either way.
Right, the same issue, no matter what. And I think the property is going to be used as something, and it's probably going to have a road go down one end of it. So we have to figure this out one way or another.
And we would be happy to help figure it out. We think that after battling back and forth here, that the homeowners association is actually a good idea, because it would be the entity charged with A, maintaining the sidewalk, B, the fence. That takes it out of the township hands, and we know that there's at least an entity that's controlling it.
And also the on-site drainage.
Yes.
And again, why are we putting the fence here? I don't remember.
Prevent the access
To
from
prevent
those
It should be a
neighbor
double
lots.
frontage.
And what happens if it is a double frontage?
Then they have to,
Comply with the front yard setback
Which is 30 feet.
requirements.
So there
And
is
all
such a thing as a double frontage?
their pools would be in violation of that, right?
there is, yeah, you can have double frontage on one property. And then you need 30 feet from each side.
So there are pools in the backyard here?
And they're gonna be-
I believe so.
There are a couple pools in the backyard along Cedar Road.
Which most likely are already fenced, per law, but they're double fencing to
Oh,
prevent access.
that's
to
what I was
the
worried
road.
about, so there is a fence on all pools? Okay, is that it?
No, look, Terry's report, he goes through, and if the board wants me to go through all the items, I certainly will. Most of them, it's indicating what we've done, and
Is there anything you don't agree on the
changes
report?
are, no, we agree with them. His item 15, he talks about the traffic study, and we will have our traffic engineer who will discuss that. There was talk at the board about left turns, no left turns. The traffic study studied it with left turns. Obviously, it's a county road, so the county is going to make the decision, but if the board has a strong feeling on that, the applicant would prefer to have it being able to make left turns the way Cedar Row and Parkside and Canterbury and all the streets do. But if after the traffic testimony, the board has input on that, the applicant is certainly willing to work with the board to make the project work.
I mean, I just want to say on the left turns with Cedar Row and Canterbury and all these other roads, that was before traffic on Lakewood was the way it is today, the high volume traffic.
And again, we have a traffic engineer, so he will testify, and then the board can
I live on
provide.
Canterbury and it's not easy to make a left turn.
I don't think it's easy to make a left turn on any road in Lakewood. And then the last item of the report says the applicant proposes a 6-foot
You got
fence.
that, Brian said you can make a left turn any other way.
It's not easy to make a left turn, except on Saturday. The limits of the fence, we're proposing from the site triangle easement to the north along County Line Road, all the way to the rear corner. It showed ending on the front yard setback of lot 62.08, because it's in a front yard setback. As Ally pointed out, the way it was currently configured, it's kind of in a front yard setback. But my answer to that would be, if these are reverse frontage lots, it's not a front yard, it's a rear yard. Reverse frontage lots propose a buffer along the rear, and a fence is part of a buffer. So my testimony is that I don't think you need any fence, any variance for a 6-foot high fence along the entire thing. We're proposing to do it. The board has the ability to grant any relief that's needed if the board determines that it's a variance situation. Again, it's a difficult lot. The applicant is trying to work out the difficulties and come to something that makes sense.
So you want to go on to the traffic engineer, or should we hear the opposition?
What's Mr. Jackson?
I'm sorry, what was that? I was trying to look up for front yard definitions.
Should we go on to the traffic engineer, or go to?
Well, it's up to you how you want to manage it, but you might want to have Mr. York ask questions of the additional testimony now, or you can wait till the end, wait till all witnesses, however you want to manage it.
I would rather hear the whole,
Focus on.
Okay, let's call
traffic engineer.
Mr. Cannon.
Just so I'm clear, we're not going to cross-examine Brian now, we'll do it
Right,
whenever that...
we'll do it, because some of your questions might be answered by this witness, or...
So I don't get to beat him up.
The hallway. Please state your name for the record.
Scott Kennel, Kennel, McDonough and Ray Associates.
Do you swear affirm testimony to give you first word with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You're here as a traffic consultant expert,
Correct.
and did you testify previously?
No, I've generated a report since the last hearing.
You recognize Mr. Kennel as an expert in this field, he's multiple appearances, please proceed.
Thank you.
So you authored a report dated May 8, 2018. It was submitted to the Township Planning Board?
Yes, my office prepared a letter, a traffic study dated May 8, 2018. And it included the conduct of traffic counts along County Line Road. They were done during the peak periods, which are generally 7 to 10 a.m. and 3 to 6 p.m. And based on our traffic counts, the peak hour in the morning is from 9 to 10.
Yeah, what day?
On what day?
What day? They were conducted May 3rd, Thursday, May
It was
3rd.
like Boehmer.
Excuse me?
It was like Boehmer.
A quasi-Jewish holiday.
I had those calendars.
Well, you could drive.
But, you know,
I have those
school
calendars, I
starts
have those
later.
calendars in my
School
office.
starts later.
And
School
finishes
finishes
much
much
earlier.
earlier.
One at a time.
Thursday, May 3rd, 2018, from 7 to 10 a.m. and 3 to 6 p.m. The morning peak hours from 9 to 10 with approximately 1,300.
Mr. Kettle, I'm sorry, gentlemen in the back, you have to stop talking. Thank you.
As I stated, the morning peak hours from 9 to 10 a.m. with approximately 1,340 vehicles passing the site two-way. And then in the afternoon, it's from 3:45 to 4:45 p.m. with approximately 1,560 vehicles two-way passing the site. Then a report goes into what the traffic projections are. Again, it's stated it's 8 dwellings, detached dwellings. I utilize the Ocean County approved trip rates, which are higher than the typical trip rates we use for residential published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. And estimated during the morning peak hour, the 8 dwellings would generate approximately 12 trips, and in the afternoon, 16 trips. Based on the traffic patterns of the area, the location of employment centers, shopping activity, and traffic counts conducted in the area, we assign approximately 70% of the traffic towards Route 9, with 30% towards the west.
How many trips in the morning?
12 trips during the 60-minute period. I mean, again, we look at a 60-minute period. We don't look at 2 hours, 3 hours when we analyze the level of service.
And there was only 12 cars, 12 trips?
We're projecting 12 based on the trip rates approved by Ocean County for Lakewood Township for residential dwellings.
Not going on county line, coming out of the property.
Coming out of the property, correct.
On county line, they said it was 1,300.
1,300 in the morning, 1,500 in the afternoon.
How many school buses are you expecting to come out?
That'd be a discussion with the Board of Ed, and again, there may be a bus stop along County Line Road. Those are things that have to be resolved with the Board of Ed.
They won't go on.
I guess they would probably similar to whatever happens on Parkside. I'm not familiar with Parkside. Is a cul-de-sac with 17 lots. This obviously is much less than that.
They stop on county line road.
Okay.
They don't go-
Consistent with the Ocean County protocol, since the traffic counts are conducted in 2018, we do a 10-year projection with a growth rate of approximately 10% over that 10-year period. And then with that, traffic counts are being the site access, or the new roadway we're creating, Road A, with County Line Road, analyze that from a level of service standpoint. And the level of service analysis indicated that the traffic exiting the site would be a level service C, or approximately 17 to 18 seconds of delay per vehicle during the peak hour. That's well below the accepted threshold by Ocean County and the traffic engineering industry. The other critical movement is the left turn in from County Line Road to the site, and now to operate at the level service A, a delay no greater than 10 seconds. Those are all within acceptable ranges, acceptable by the county. And I also need to clarify, ultimately, the final design of this roadway intersection with County Line Road is going to be subject to Ocean County. It's their roadway, it's subject to their review and approval. So basically, in summary, generate traffic for the 8 proposed dwellings, the level of service at this location considering left turns in and out, which is consistent with other cul-de-sacs in area, whether it's Parkside Drive with 17 homes. You have T-Berry that has close to 40 homes that serve off of County Line Road. This is a much lesser intense development, based with 8 homes. It would operate at levels of service acceptable to Ocean County.
So, and just the math, I didn't follow. So, let's say every minute, how many cars are passing down the morning?
Every
Okay.
minute? Well, I like I said, I mean, I can break down, and our report breaks down how many vehicles eastbound and westbound. It was table 1 of our report, that during the morning peak hour, you had 780 vehicles eastbound at this location.
Per hour or?
Per hour.
Per hour.
During the peak hour, 9 to 10. That's the highest hour
Okay.
of traffic from 7 to 10. In the westbound direction, it's 562 vehicles recorded. During the afternoon peak hour, we recorded 720 vehicles in the eastbound direction and 842 in the westbound direction.
You have a chart, so let's
Well,
say
we
we're
have
in
to take-
hours,
Exactly, that's
broken
the,
down to hours.
So let's say in the afternoon,
15
there's about 1,500 vehicles per hour crisscrossing on County Line Road.
correct.
And you feel that it's safe to make a left turn out during that period?
Yes, it is. I've done the left turns out of Parkside Drive. Again, you gotta remember, there's also the benefit of traffic signals on either side that platoons the traffic, organizes, and creates the gaps. So with the benefit of the traffic signal to the west at Kent, and then a Laurel to the east, that helps, again, provide gaps.
Laurel is about 10 blocks away.
Well, but it still has an influence.
And then you have the curve, like Case Road, which I think is dangerous.
Well, again, that's far beyond, as far as, and I should have mentioned that, as far as sight distance, what we're required here is approximately 500 feet. We have over 700 feet of sight distance in each direction at this location. So again, from a sight distance standpoint, we exceed the recommended
60 miles
standard.
an hour, you need just to some.
Well, it's posted 45, use a design speed of 50. But again, the fact we have over 700 feet, if they're doing 60, we meet the criteria for 60 miles an hour as well.
Did you say the trip generation was 12 cars per hour?
12 in the morning, 16 in the afternoon. That's based on the Ocean County approved trip
Does that
rates.
account for 2 households or for 1 household? Because I understand this will have basement apartments. So there's really
That
two
accounts,
households.
that accounts for the apartments. Again, the standard trip rate for a residential dwelling is, it's approximately 40% less in the morning that were used by the county, and the afternoon trip rate is 100% greater than what's recommended by ITE. So again, the county has factored that into the fact that the potential for basement apartments, and have stipulated that those higher trip rates have to be used for any residential development in Lakewood.
So even with the basement apartments, it's still 12 an hour with 8 homes?
Correct.
It's 8 or 9, 8, right?
8.
And just to,
I mean, and even if you should increase that, say you go to 16 trips, it's still gonna be level service C. There is a reserve capacity, and again, as I stated earlier, the other traffic signals that bracket either side of that also help and improve the capacity and efficiency of people entering and exiting this subdivision.
just to go over, you say it will never be worse than a level C, even if you make a left turn out, or left turn out.
The analysis was based on doing left turns in a level service C. If it was all right turns, it'd be a level service B. But with left turns, as considered in the analysis, of level service C.
Thank you.
And last time, we represented, just for the record, that as a condition of approval, we'd make an application to the Ocean County Planning Board.
I think you have to anyway.
Yeah, but we made that
Regardless.
This same report will be going right to the
same report's
county.
gonna go to the county.
Have you applied to the county yet?
Not yet.
I think our approval is only subject to Ocean County approval.
Yes, Mr. Kennel, what do you think about the top side of the diagram? I don't see the north arrow. The adjacent lots on the top, I guess it would be the northeast corner of the property. Is a site triangle necessary for that lot? I'll tell you what the lot number is. You know, is that going to interfere with the, like this proposes a fence going all the way out to the corner there? That's lot 5802. Is any of that lot in the site triangle
There
for
is
this
a-
new road?
As I look at the plan, a portion of that lot it's basically an area that shows the sidewalk that exists along County Line Road, but there are no fences or obstructions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. York.
Should I start with him? Because he's standing there and it's easier.
Mr. Weiss, those are all
You
your
wanna beat up first?
witnesses?
Yes.
A couple questions about the plan, and Mr. Jackson just brought up the fence issue. If a fence is to run all the way, my directions are as bad as John's, east to west, I guess, from the back, from the rear of that property. See, I told you my directions. North, south to north, if a fence runs that whole distance, you'd agree that will block the site triangle?
If you run into the property corner, correct, but it will be stopped prior to the property corner to be compliant with the site triangle easement shown on the plan.
All right, and how many feet is that site triangle easement from the south to the north? I won't hold you to an exact number, go with a ballpark.
I'm gonna guess probably 10 feet.
In theory, you need a site triangle easement, you'd agree,
Excuse me,
correct?
Chairman.
Yes.
I just want to clarify on the fence question. I'm looking at the design engineer's site layout plan, sheet 207. They are ending the 6-foot fence, not at the right-of-way. They're ending it at the secondary frontage for lot 62.01. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking here. Excuse me. Yes. The 6-foot fence is not going to be allowed within the front yard setback of County Line Road.
Well, that was my testimony, that we're proposing it all the way to the site triangle easement, to the
Okay.
extent that that needs relief. If the board feels like granting the relief, we'll happily accept it. If not, we'll reduce it to a 4-foot fence, or whatever the board would like to do with that fence.
May I ask a question of the traffic engineer? You testified earlier about site distances. What is your recommendation relative to the fence?
Well, I don't know where the setback is. I mean, the 10 feet would be, I guess, the minimum. I mean, my recommendation would be anywhere from 15 to 20 feet back from the property corner. The more you can provide, the better.
So if we took that back 20 feet, and there's a township requirement that the fence within the front yard setback
Be 4 feet high.
would be 4 feet high and that remaining 10.
That'd be fine.
So if that fence was terminated back 20 feet from the right of way, and the first 10 feet of that would be 4 feet versus 6 feet. That would be
That's
something.
fine by me.
we would consider.
We would agree to that.
Okay. Thank you.
The purpose is for people coming out, they can make a left turn. So 4 feet is still gonna obstruct.
If the board feels
All right.
that you don't want to have any fencing at all within
You wanna
the 30
pull
feet,
back?
you can do that.
We're not sure yet. If you
46
want a left
minutes.
turn or not. Right, we'll see soon.
Okay.
I think the board is questioning a left turn out.
Okay.
Do we know what's on that corner lot right now? And you're closer to the number, so I'll go with,
5802.
thank you, lot
I
5802.
mean, we had an aerial here, didn't we have? Ryan, was there an aerial?
Yep.
This was exhibit A4. So as I understand, it's a residential lot on that lot 58.02.
Okay.
And there was some vegetation along the frontage from the aerial.
Right, and you would need that lot owner's permission to create that site triangle easement, correct? And if he or she parks cars there, has a house there, it may affect your need for a site triangle easement.
Well, where the site triangle easement is shown, it's adjacent to the sidewalk. My recollection is that you wouldn't have people parking right up against that sidewalk in that location, or that there was vegetation. So in that regard, to be compliant with the site triangle line shown there, existing conditions will provide that sight line that we need.
But if that current property owner doesn't grant a site triangle easement, then you don't have one, correct?
I'm going to object to this question to this witness. I think it's better ask Mr. Flannery.
Okay, you can object all you want, but the witness is testifying about the site triangle.
You can
Why
ask
are we not
Mr.
talking
Kellman.
about it?
That's a fair question, Mr. Kellman.
If there is an obstruction and there needs to be a clear site triangle view provided, then there would need to be an easement. But I don't know whether that is necessary based on existing conditions.
But you'd agree that you do need a site triangle easement on that corner? Your testimony was that you need a site triangle easement to take a left turn out of that?
And usually those are provided when there's obstructions where whether vegetations or other features that would prohibit the site view, site distance. So if there is something, yes, but if there's nothing obstructing that sight line, then I don't, and that's a legal question, but in my opinion,
I'll give
would
you,
need a
Mr. Herzl, my experience with that has been where, with the county, they require the applicant, if the site triangle is necessary, to obtain it.
Or we don't allow left turns, no, we have no
Or
problem.
no, right, so the county, this is a county road we're on, and they'll have to get county approval. And if the site triangle is required by the county engineering department, they'll make the applicant get it
I think
as a condition.
I think if we don't need the
Mr.
left
Boyce's
turns,
point
we
is
solve a lot
Brian
of
might
problems
know
right now.
that.
I think Brian would know
The
that.
traffic.
I mean, you still need to be able to see, so, you know.
Not for right turn, you don't need.
For right turn, you travel the other way, so you can see, make sure you make read.
But-
Side triangle,
It's the
Well,
same
that's
thing, it's a side triangle is for both right and left turn movements. And if I could just speak to
Can I
limiting
stop you
left
for a
turns.
second?
Sure.
It's also for people traveling south on, what street is it? On County Line Road. So you can see people coming up to the stop sign as you're going on County Line Road heading toward this. You know what I mean? The site triangle works in both directions.
county line is east to west.
This is for people traveling west.
People traveling west, as you approach this from the top heading down, the cars going that way will get a better view of cars coming out to the stop sign to see whether they're stopping or whatever.
And if the side triangle easement is on private property, he doesn't want to give it.
I believe the county has eminent domain options for that, and they can also, the circumstance I was in with this, I remember they theoretically had the ability to do that, they refused to do it, and we had to keep making a sweeter and sweeter offer until the person who owned the property gave us the site triangle, and we had to pay for it. That was my experience with it.
You just had it behind
I-
Wawa on Kennedy.
I don't know if it always works that way. I would imagine Mr. Kennel would have more experience with that than I would. I would imagine Mr. Flannery would, and maybe Mr. Vogt.
But either way, whether left or right, doesn't matter, they have to take care of that.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter, it's a moot point.
It's the nature of the road, it's the nature of the road, it's the nature of the road being.
How that happens doesn't matter to us right now.
But it's subject to getting the easement, if not, the approval's.
Well,
not
I would
through.
say it's subject to the county approval.
Right.
And the county engineering department will
We'll do what they
determine
have to do.
exactly what's required.
Correct.
Okay.
One more question about your report, and the board already asked it, but I want to ask it as well. Your report was based on a study done on a Jewish holiday, correct?
Our counts were done on May 3rd, schools were in session,
But it's a Jewish holiday.
the schools were in session, so, I mean, based on data we've collected along County Line Road, it was consistent with prior data we collected.
Thank you. But, so, just so I'm clear, your testimony is that the traffic counts are the exact same as they would be May 3rd as a non-Jewish holiday?
They were consistent with other data we collected in area.
I have no further questions.
I think it was, if he says there were 1,500 cars going through a day, it was a regular day, a busy day.
Those hours.
Thank you.
Earlier you discussed the positive and negative criteria, and the negative criteria being that it's your opinion that there's not much of a negative effect on the neighbors, correct?
My testimony was that, given the permitted uses of schools and campuses, and the fact that we could do 7 residential houses by right, that the 8th is a negligible impact on the adjoining property owners, and the impact on the adjoining property owners is more likely ameliorated by the type of provisions the board is asking for. So that on the negative side is very small. On the positive side, we're providing housing opportunities. We're providing 12,000 square foot lots for houses which are larger than many of the houses in the neighborhood, and that property owners should be entitled to the norm of the neighborhood. And these certainly are the norm of the neighborhood, because from 90 to 86 is a de minimis reduction.
Right, and that one additional lot is such a great benefit to the township that that is the requested variance.
Well, it has to be substantially bigger, so substantial, when you compare it to something tiny, substantially doesn't have to be great. Substantially has to be substantially bigger than something that's tiny.
Okay, can we look at the, I don't know which exhibit it is, the one with the blue? A1, I think?
Yes.
Thanks, Brian. Are there other subdivisions in the area which have been created similarly to the one you're proposing?
But this is a very unique lot. There wasn't, as far as I've been in Lakewood, another 3-acre lot in this neighborhood that was created.
Have there even been any other lots similar to that which would then which have created the backyard issue to the street that my clients are affected?
This is a neighborhood that's been developed years ago, so there was no situation where there was a 3-acre lot in a backyard. So no, there were no that were created like that in this area.
Do you know if there were any created in other neighborhoods in Lakewood, similar to that?
I didn't research that, so I'm not sure.
I have no further questions, Mr. Flanagan.
You have any other witnesses?
I do. Mr. Lax.
Did you ask whether any other members of the public had any questions of the applicant's witnesses before we
You can
go?
open to the public.
Were you going to open to the public after they go? Thank you. Mr. Glass, please raise your right hand. Do you swear firm testimony you give before this board with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I affirm. I affirm.
Just state your name for the record and spell your name.
Ralph Lax, L-A-K-S, my last name.
Can you address?
1487 Cedar Road.
Mr. Lax, can you tell the board and use probably Exhibit A1 to tell the board where you live?
Yes, I'm directly west of the property, and it's lot 56. It's the third lot in from West County Line Road.
And what's in your backyard now?
Currently, there's a rear yard with trees.
Okay. And do you have a fence in your backyard?
No fence. I have some bushes, that's it.
Do your neighbors have similar property to you?
No, the neighbor to my north has a pool in the back.
But they also, your neighbors have similar homes to you, single-family homes?
Yes, yes.
Some have fences, some have pools, that kind of thing? Okay. And if this application were to go through, and you've listened to testimony here, you're aware that a fence will be put up in your backyard, correct?
Yes.
And a street as well?
Yes, I'm not clear on the fence, because there's some talk, I don't know if there's gonna be a fence or not a fence, or a private lot. But one question I would ask of the board is, if it's a private lot, what restrictions do we have on what's being placed there? So they're opening up everything to a whole bunch of variables as to what's gonna be there, which I may or may not accept.
Right, but we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, fine.
So currently, lot 62, the applicant's lot, what's on that lot?
Old growth trees, sparsely spaced, and existing one-family dwelling.
And you'd agree, and as the board's here now, that that property will or may be developed at some point in time?
Yes,
But this application is not the one you're looking for, correct?
that's correct.
Because of the size of the lots, because of the traffic in the neighborhood, any other specific reasons?
There's a drainage issue on the property, and
But you have experts that'll discuss
Yes.
that? Okay. Is there anything specific other than what you just said, and we'll have your witnesses testify?
no.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does the board have questions of the?
Yeah, I have a question. If you were to get an opportunity to choose whatever you want on that property, what would that be?
That's speculative here. What is your name?
Sable, Heinz Sable.
That's speculative. I really can't answer that.
It's an answer. Unless Mr. Weiss has questions.
I have no questions.
So, I just want to ask one, that question is also, you have the same answer if you want a fence, if you don't want a fence, if you don't want to go into it.
I think he wants a status quo.
Yeah, not status quo, but, you know, you really should look at the application after you hear from my experts. And they're more better positioned to say what the deficiencies are than I am.
Talks like a lawyer. I'll have Mr. Cornick sworn in.
Do you swear from the testimony to give before this board with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name.
John Cornick, K-O-R-N-I-C-K,
And I don't think you ever.
I have not.
You never came before this board.
not before this board.
So, Mr.
Just give the board a very brief background of your credentials.
Sure. I am the owner and president of K2 Consulting Engineers, a civil engineering and surveying firm in Haddonfield, New Jersey. I have an environmental science degree from West Virginia University, a civil engineering degree from Drexel University, been a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey since 2011, also licensed in Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland. I've presented before boards in Ocean County, all the way from Cape May County up to Bergen County, west and east. So I've been through the state in about 500 presentations.
Accept them as an expert in the
Yes.
field of engineering, please proceed.
Accepted.
Thank you.
Please proceed.
So, Mr. Lax had contacted our office to take an application review of what's being presented before the board. We can go through what I have reviewed, so you have that on record, and then from there present our concerns with the application that is currently under review. So we have reviewed multiple items. One is the application that was submitted to the board. We have correspondence submitted to the Township of Lakewood by Allie Morris, or it's to Allie Morris, sorry, as prepared by Gina Caldrick of Morgan Engineering, dated April 12th. I believe that was a letter that contemplated a discussion on stormwater management. We have a traffic impact analysis that's dated November 21st by Morgan Engineering. We have a stormwater management report for preliminary and final subdivision is prepared by Morgan Engineering, dated February 5th, no revisions. I've also reviewed the transcript that was prepared by Susan Walsh, dated April 18th, 2018. We've reviewed the plans, final or preliminary and final major subdivision plan, prepared by Morgan Engineering and Surveying, dated November 9th, last revised April 11th, 2018. We have some architectural plans. It's my understanding those have been pulled out of the application, but I will touch on those a little bit. Those were prepared by Salvatore Santoro, dated January 3rd, 2018. I believe that Exhibit A3 is the revised plan that's presented to the board. There was no date mentioned during the testimony, so I'm assuming that A3 is revised to April 11th. So I'm not going to bore you with obviously what the summary is, but there is some confusion and discussion of what is actually presented to this board. We have a single-family residential subdivision that's contemplated. There's been discussion of apartments in the basement. If you were to take your ordinance and separate what that really means, I think that your ordinance has a conflict. We do have section, I believe it's 18-910, that discusses basement apartments. But specifically in your definitions of your ordinance, we have a definition of dwelling. And in dwelling, there's a discussion of, specifically, a two-family dwelling. Two-family dwelling by definition, this is kind of giving my foundation of discussion of planning on the project, and I'll get further into some of the hard engineering. But two-family dwelling is defined as a building on a single lot containing two dwelling units, one unit above the other, each of which is totally separated from the other by an unpierced ceiling and floor extending from exterior walls to exterior wall, with a common stairwell exterior to both dwelling units and having separate private entrances to each dwelling unit. So I think it's clear that the application presented to the board, even if you contemplate a by right apartment, we are dealing with a duplex. That's just part of my first observation of the application.
Chairman, would you like your professionals to respond to that, or let them continue?
So let's hear what he has to say. Well, this isn't our first time we've...
No.
Mr. Flannery,
Yeah.
spoiler alert.
With that said, we did...
If we said basement apartments weren't allowed, we would turn Lakewood on its head.
and I understand that, but the
This is
presentation...
not a two-family house.
This is an
We don't look at it as a
application for
two-family.
single-family homes. The
Next.
apartments
Yeah,
are
so
we'll move
issued
on.
permits
We
by
hear what
the
you're saying.
department.
It's a single-family with a basement.
Like I
It's not a
said, there's a
two-family.
conflict in your ordinance, I just wanted to identify.
Okay.
But moving on to the application. So, again, we had the opportunity to review your presentation from the prior meeting, March 20th. And I did review the waivers that were requested by the applicant at the time. And I find that the application, again, is presented as board members. I think you have a challenge reviewing the plan and approving the plan, granting some of the waivers that you're granting or that you have granted. Specifically, I'd like to go over the waiver that was granted for off-site information within 200 feet of the property boundary. As you heard in prior testimony, there's contemplation about whether a site triangle easement is required, whether it can be achieved. I think that that is a life and safety and health issue with respect to the plan. If you go out to the property and if you stand in the general location of the proposed right-of-way, the center line, and if you look to the west and you look to the east, To the west, you do have a conflict. You have a conflict at the corner of Cedar Row, where there's an existing picket fence right against the sidewalk. I don't think that you, in my professional opinion, have the clear site triangle that's necessary per the AASHTO requirements. So I believe that the waiver granted challenges you in reviewing this application with respect to the variances requested and what's presented. Moving on to, we're going to look past the architectural plan. I think that your protocol is already established. I don't think I can challenge that before the board. But the plan, if even presented as a basement apartment, doesn't meet the RSIS requirements. So there is an underlying code that we have to abide by as design engineers in the state of New Jersey. By their definition, this is a multifamily house, a duplex. So I think that the criteria of the RSIS needs to be followed. If you look at the densities that are potentially proposed, 2 units per property, we start to exceed the 5 units per acre. We're at right about 5.3, so it's a medium density proposal. So the application needs to show how it meets the RSIS criteria. That's an underlying rule that we have to follow. As you look at the RSIS criteria, we start to exceed some of those standards. Township ordinance or township requirements go to a 32-foot wide right-of-way. That's an exceedance of the ordinance of the RSIS. The plans are kind of difficult to understand with respect to the right-of-way and the cartway bulb size. RSIS strictly states that you cannot exceed 40-foot right-of-way on a cul-de-sac bulb. And the right-of-way can only go 8 feet beyond that, so the right-of-way can only be 48 feet, unless the township engineer and fire code official provide sufficient documentation that states that the Lakewood Township fire trucks or emergency management vehicles cannot navigate the 40 feet. So this is all going to stem onto my discussion about the concerns of stormwater management in the application presented. But we're looking at a significant amount of roadway to be constructed, and we're looking at a highly deficient stormwater management plan that's going to have an impact on the neighbors to the west and to the east. So that's why I want to start discussing RSIS and concerns with the plan and how I feel that the board, as you sit here as residents and board members, should not approve this application this evening.
Can I just interject something? It's not that we approve a basement apartment. We just recognize that if anyone who has a house goes into the zoning office, they can get a permit for a basement apartment.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this could be 8 single-family homes with no basement apartments just as well. So I just want to, that's how we get it, that's how we evaluate the density issue and why. And so it really is an 8-unit house, 8-unit subdivision. We just make sure when we get it, we design it for what we anticipate to be a likelihood of a basement apartment.
The potential. No, and I think that's shown on the plan. It's shown with your driveways as presented. That allows you to achieve the parking that's necessary under the RSIS standard. But again, I do want to go through specifically the testimony that was provided by Mr. Flannery and his indication that the negative criteria has been achieved with respect to his testimony and the variance relief sought. So the variance relief sought is clear, and the planner, part of our team, will dive into this, but this goes into the engineering side. It's clear that we have too many units on the property, regardless of whether this will be a residential home subdivision or not. We're asking for width variance relief on the frontage, and we do have an undersized lot right at the intersection of the new right-of-way and County Line Road. If we start to contemplate this 5-foot wide sidewalk strip of land and what happens there, I'm going to point to A3. That will trigger a variance for this particular lot, which is the third lot on the bulb as you come around and head towards County Line Road. Right now, that's about 12,082 square feet. Take 5 feet off of that for a total width. I did the rough calculation while I was listening to testimony, and now we dropped below 12,000 square feet. So that would require a variance. When you start to run a strip of land out towards that location, now you're talking about putting a fence in a front yard. So there's a lot of variances that need to be looked at where this board, I feel, is challenged in acting. So now that we talk about stormwater management, we don't have a plan here, but there is a contemplated underground system. The underground system is described in this stormwater management report dated February 5th, and then this letter that's dated April 12th starts to discuss how it still and will not meet the standards of the state. The state standards for infiltration basins that are underground specifically state that they have to have pre-treatment prior to discharge, and that the peak flow reduction or the peak volume reduction cannot be reduced as a result of an infiltration rate that's contemplated on this plan, which was never tested on this site. So again, I feel that the board has a challenge. I don't see, from a professional standpoint, how you can review this application comfortably and approve it with the stormwater management proposed. Multiple reasons. One is once they do soil borings out on the site and they find that the infiltration rates do not meet the standard in their report, this basin's going to have to get bigger. It's going to have to deal with that conflict. In addition, when you're in direct non-compliance with the state of New Jersey's regulation, you are now challenging your township's regulations. Your ordinance has to follow state standard. When you deviate from that standard, you start to compromise your MS4 permit, your major stormwater permit for the town.
I just think if the stormwater management doesn't work, the approval is subject.
May I interject, Chairman?
Yes, sure.
You're not familiar with Lakewood procedures. Do you have a copy of our May review?
I do.
Okay. Comment number 11, page 5. We had a comment about the project being major development. As a result, project must meet water quality and water quantity rate requirements. Revised comment, the stormwater management report has been submitted for review. The proposed stormwater management design will be reviewed after revisions are submitted for resolution compliance if approval is granted. Now, several things happen in Lakewood procedures from a logistics standpoint. It's an underground basin. You brought up the point about the pre-treatment. Flow guards in the inlets are used as a pre-treatment measure in addition to the recharge, number one. Number two, as we were discussing earlier, I'm not sure if you were here for the whole meeting. The applicant is proposing to dedicate the in-street underground system to Lakewood Township. As a matter of procedure, if the board acts favorably tonight, this design has to be reviewed by Department of Public Works prior to acceptance. Now, one of three things is going to happen at that time. Either they're going to look at the design, they're going to say, this is great, we can accept it. They make a per unit contribution per the UDO, that's it. Scenario number two is, no, we don't like this design, but if you change A, B, and C, we would accept it. And then they would change. This is an underground basin. No one's going to see this. This is a basin within the cartway of the roadway. It's not like the board is seeing a basin this big on a property and it goes to this big after the approval. Nobody sees this basin. Number three, and this happens, and Mr. Franklin has witnessed this in past years. Mr. Franklin was former Department of Public Works Director. They've gotten designs after stormwater approvals where they say, you know what, we're not going to accept this. And the applicants have two choices. Either they have an HOA maintain the basin or system, or the applicant comes back to the board and makes changes in an effort to placate DPW. That's the procedure here. This application, from a stormwater point of view, is not perfected, is not complete. Procedurally, if the board were to act favorably, it will be perfected during compliance review, and it will comply with NJAC 7:8.
And I understand that, but that stems into my discussion as to how the negative criteria is not achieved.
Okay.
So,
which is a planning issue.
Which is a planning issue,
Okay.
but stormwater is planning, it's engineering.
Okay.
So, again, from an engineering perspective, the flow guard that's contemplated is not an approved TSS removal product in the state of New Jersey. While there's many tests on it that probably show that it's achievable and it works, it's not an acceptable product, unfortunately. So,
Do you agree?
to,
Respectfully, no.
there's a list in the state of New Jersey.
I know about the list, you're talking about the NJCAP 80% list.
Correct.
I believe the BMPs refer to pre-treatment, I don't believe they refer to NJCAP certified pre-treatment.
There's multiple flaws in the stormwater management, and again, my concern is from a planning perspective. You cross over to the engineering side, life safety and health are not achieved in this application. Mr. Lax had indicated that there are drainage concerns. We did visit the property. Again, the stormwater management report is lacking in significant information as to the pre-development and post-development condition maps to show how the drainage occurs on site. We came to the property, we looked. It appears to me that a small portion of the property on the north side does drain to County Line Road, no impact to the east or west. But a significant portion of the property is all drained towards the property in question.
Have you seen the survey?
I have.
Okay.
So
Is
I'm
it
just going
consistent
through
with the survey?
It's consistent with the survey, what I saw out in the field. So when you start to take this underground system and throw it down into this, on the subsurface, I understand you don't see it, so therefore out of sight, out of mind, correct? If it's working or not, who cares? But the concern is that we've had significant rain events over the last couple of months. This particular system, I think, would be challenged. And should this system be surcharged, should it not meet the infiltration rates that are contemplated in the report, should it have to get bigger, we would have a flooding concern on this particular project because where this is located, it's at a low point of the road. It would have to surcharge the road and then discharge out to the county road. So there are significant flaws, and I believe from a planning perspective and engineering perspective, this board is challenged in approving this project this evening as presented.
And if it is would to be a 7-lot property, would that help?
I think even if you reduce, I think you still have the same amount of road, and I think you still have the same amount of stormwater generated, with exception to one house. So you would still have the same problem. You have problems with the property as presented.
Just so I can point one thing out to the board and to Terry as well. This isn't, while we're talking about stormwater, it's not so much the stormwater system, because I agree with Terry, this isn't perfected at this point, and it will be in theory at some point later if the board would approve. This really goes to what the negative criteria of the overall application are.
Correct.
Meaning, there's problems with this application, here's one of them, and here's why. Even though we can agree that there is no stormwater plan really in effect at this point.
And with respect to the township's procedure, I understood the procedure prior to coming up with this information. So the second item with regards to traffic, and we have a traffic engineer, a very qualified traffic engineer here to discuss, is the site triangle. Everybody kicked around this site triangle and the ability of whether we have to get an off-site easement. Again, life, health, and safety concern. Negative criteria is still not satisfied. When we talk about the stormwater management system, Mr. Vogt had indicated how that would go down. Again, underground system, the way presented, identified in the report, even as may be perfected, I believe that this system will not work and will not provide the necessary measures to reduce the peak flow volume and rate that leaves the site. The reports state that they don't. There's a letter that's been authored by, I don't know if she's an engineer or not, but that probably shouldn't be even represented as record. There's not an engineer seal as respect to a revised stormwater report. So again, negative criteria has not been achieved. From a planning perspective, again, just to surmise, the subdivision as presented, I think, is challenged. From a professional opinion, the negative criteria has not been achieved from an engineering perspective because it's a self-created hardship that's identified. They're creating their own hardship to reduce the widths. They haven't achieved any of the life safety and health measures that are necessary for this board to act on an application as presented.
And the question by witness from John May and Mr. Weiss May as well.
Any board members have any questions? Okay, do you have a traffic report?
I have a traffic expert and a planning expert, but I'm guessing, since Alan's standing right behind me, that he'd like his shot now, which is fine by me. I have no
I mean,
issue with it.
I'll do whatever the board wants to do. If you want him to put his whole case in, and then I
Do you have
can...
any questions for him?
I do.
Okay, so.
I do.
Would you like to do it later?
Just to wait until the whole case is done?
Yeah, because I don't want
It's
to
up
be
to you.
repetitive.
The board wants to do it now.
Chairman,
do it now, so it's fresh in our
Okay.
I feel like we're getting conflicting testimony, so maybe it would be,
Okay.
We
some
are.
of the things he mentioned were in direct contradiction to the ordinance requirements and Mr. Flannery's testimony on the right of way, so.
Yeah, so we have to unpack a lot here, what you said, because you had traffic issues that you purport to say are life safety issues. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You have drainage issues that you purport to say are life safety issues.
That is correct.
You say you got density issues that are purporting to be life safety issues.
I indicated that the density, if you were to apply the basement onto the property, you need to apply the RSI standards and show how it would comply.
Okay, so let's go backwards when we unpack this. So first of all, your traffic testimony, are you a traffic engineer?
My traffic testimony was with respect to site triangles.
Okay, so-
And the lack of information to the east and west to show how a site triangle can be effectively achieved. That's what was my testimony.
And why is it your testimony that it's not achievable on this plan?
If you heard what I said, at
I
the
did hear what you
intersection of
said.
Cedar Row, there is a corner lot that has a picket or a stockade fence. And as you sit and stand at the location of this new right-of-way, and if you look to the left of the approaching vehicles, there is a conflict with that fence and what I would perceive as the site triangle. The problem with the plan and the waivers that were approved by the board is that that plan does not show the fence locations. Doesn't reflect the existing conditions out in the field, so that the engineer that's presenting the plan can say that there is a clear site triangle 580 feet away.
Have you made applications or commented on applications to the Ocean County Planning Board?
I have.
Would you agree that if the Ocean County Planning Board approves that site triangle easement, and your comment goes away?
It could.
It could.
It could.
And you realize, because what you heard here, that this application is contingent in its entirety on approval by the Ocean County Planning Board?
It is.
It is. So-
But as a board member, as you represent the negative criteria, the variance relief that you're seeking, you have to provide the correct testimony as to why this application can be approved.
Well, and here's why I'm confused about your testimony, because you keep leapfrogging life safety issues into negative criteria commentary on this application. And I'm just trying to search here in my mind, what authority do you have that life safety issues can morph their way into a discussion of life safety? It's my understanding that when you talk about life safety under the municipal land use law and the case law, that what we're really talking about is the police power and not zoning.
No, not if you look at the criteria for variance testimony. Again, engineering is with regards to life and safety,
Well, let me
correct?
back you up here a little bit. If all of a sudden, hypothetically, and this is a huge hypothetical, that my client said, I want to make this a 7-lot subdivision, and now there's no variances, okay, you wouldn't have any testimony that you could elicit and deliver to the board that would be in connection to the negative criteria, could it?
But the negative criteria is not required at that point.
That's exactly right.
But there are ordinance requirements for site triangles and stormwater management that comply. So what you're trying to contemplate or state that I'm inaccurately indicating is false.
No, my point is that if this was a 7-lot subdivision, we wouldn't be hearing any testimony about positive and negative criteria because it wouldn't be necessary, because this would be an as-of-right application. However, I think I did hear you say that it wouldn't matter to your testimony whether or not it was an 8-lot subdivision where we do need a couple of little variances, or a 7 where we wouldn't. You would still have these same concerns. So what I'm saying is that you're morphing purported life safety issues / police power issues to the negative criteria. And I don't think it's valid on this application.
You have indicated, and I'm not a planner.
That's right, you're not.
You have indicated that there is negative criteria, that there was testimony from your professional planner engineer, let me finish, that there was negative criteria and it was satisfied.
So let me ask you a question.
Right, so define negative criteria to me, and I find that the negative criteria from an engineering perspective is not achieved.
So, but you're making my point here. If this was a 7-lot subdivision, would you say that you would still have the same stormwater issues?
I would.
But you couldn't say that it was negative criteria at that point,
It
could you?
would, you would say that it didn't meet the ordinance, right? Stormwater management
You're not answering, I
regulations.
just want an answer to my question.
Let him answer the question.
Go ahead and ask me a question.
Okay, I'm going to do it again. If it was a 7-lot subdivision, you're saying that you would still have the same stormwater management issues, yes?
Correct.
But you couldn't say at that point that it was a negative criteria issue that you would talk to the board about.
You could still apply the engineering standard that life, health, and safety could be compromised.
So, you would also agree, what you heard from the board here, that this application is also contingent upon approval from other approving authorities, including the township engineer, whether or not the stormwater management system is going to work or not. So, and if they say it's going to work and it satisfies the legal standards of saying it's satisfied, then you wouldn't have a concern anymore.
If a conforming plan was presented to your land use board or your planning board or zoning board, then yes, I could apply that criteria. But what is presented today is severely flawed and deficient from an engineering perspective, and therefore my testimony remains that I do not see how this application could be approved as presented and designed.
I don't want to keep belaboring the same point, but you've already agreed that you're not a planner. But you're giving me planning issues and not engineering issues, because you can't tell me whether or not there's defects in the stormwater management plan, because it hasn't been fully engineered.
That we agree on.
I'm not going to disagree.
Okay.
I have what is called a stormwater management report for a preliminary final subdivision as prepared for this application, right?
Yep.
It's got routing, it's the routing of the pre and post storm beds. It's got a contemplation as to how this stormwater management will operate on the site. It has representation that it doesn't meet the criteria of NJAC 7:8, which is a state regulation. It says it within this, and then your April 12th letter from the engineering firm indicates the same, that it does not meet the standard. So therefore, regardless of the manner as to the way the township approves a stormwater management plan, this board does not have or cannot approve this application. In my professional opinion.
I've got just a couple more questions, because it's going to get late here.
Just one second. Mr. Jackson, Mr. Flansman can only stay another 5-10 minutes.
Well,
Then we're not gonna have the 5 original people. So,
Then you could postpone, or
Can we finish in 5
finish
minutes?
the case, finish in 5 minutes.
I think Mr. York's professionals are going
Yeah.
to belabor their points and take their time speaking as the engineer has been.
No,
We're
my
going to
question was-
Lawyers get paid by the minute, too. Let's not
My question, what do we do? Because we heard the whole application, should we just continue and then he'll listen to the tape, or?
You can continue with the application, then we could vote when Mr. Flansbaum gets caught up with the, by listening to the tape.
Or we could take the other items on our agenda and pick this up another time.
Victory party.
Right.
What do you say?
Mr.
For the record, I've never left early. Never. Thank you.
I'm just concerned that we have a few nonprofits on that I know are
Yeah, you know,
specific on
what's
our
your point?
agenda.
Do you feel that you can point your argument?
Mr. Herzl, as the
The board would
chairman,
like to-
as the chairman, you have the authority to manage the meeting as you see fit. You can make them come back and start up on another night, and then we have a room full of other applicants here. And it's
Right.
quarter to
So I
8.
think we'll give another 5 minutes to finish your testimony, and then we'll continue another night.
I think that's fine.
Okay.
I'm okay with that, too. We'll just finish with this witness so he doesn't have to come back, if that's okay with the board.
I don't know if I can finish in 5 minutes with him, he might have to come back.
We'd rather not.
Okay.
So just finish with it. Take your time.
5 minutes. So, traffic, you said something that confused me too. The proposed right-of-way dedication is 50 feet, correct?
That's what's represented on the plan.
Okay, well, that's what's on the plan. And the paved portion of the cartway is
32 feet.
32 feet. So when you said that the addition of a sidewalk is going to render proposed lot 62.06,
What we were hearing in testimony, and I pointed out, was that there was going to be a 5-foot wide strip of land that would be attached to this terminal cul-de-sac property, right?
No.
That was scratched. That was scratched?
No,
Okay.
Mr. Flannery indicated there would be a 4-foot wide strip of property and that the right-of-way would be reduced to 46 feet.
Right.
I heard
Which
that
is
quite
beyond
clearly.
township standard, right, or reduced from township standard?
Township, I do not believe has a minimum, but the board generally requests a 32-foot cartway and a 50-foot right-of-way, but I do not believe there's a minimum ordinance requirement.
Mr. Boyce, as long as this line stays static,
right,
then I'm satisfied. I mean, it is what it is. Okay.
thank you. I'm done. Thank you.
Did you say you had a transcript?
I did.
Is it a certified transcript?
It is.
Yeah.
How many pages is it?
I'd have to go through it.
Because one of the other options is a board member who didn't hear the last testimony could read that.
This is...
I'm not gonna read it in 5 minutes.
No, you're not doing it.
Yeah, 72 pages.
Yeah.
Is it submitted as evidence and Harry could review it?
Well, it would be for the board members, but you can't.
But I don't think I can be the one to submit it anyway. I don't think I can be the one to submit the transcript anyway.
Certified.
I don't think it's certified. It's not a certified court, no, it's the court transcript done by, who is it, Susan? Lisa Water.
Okay, hold on, we have some administrative stuff you have to announce, we have to carry. You'll give consent for the waiver of whatever time period might be applicable?
Yes.
To the
Okay,
19th.
so we have to make the announcement, you have to select the date, and we have to...
The next meeting is June 19th.
Told you I get paid by the appearance for fun.
How many...
Special meeting for that. Just like we
Yeah, like Saturday afternoon.
And then,
June 19th currently only has 2 items on it, but there's about 3 or 4 more trying to get on.
I think you should be with this. 23, Okay, you agree to June 19th? Brian, is that good for you?
Yes.
Yes. June 19th, no published, no emails.
No, we'll make the announcement in a moment, and with the chairman's consent, I'll put it at the beginning of the agenda.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're recording.
One second.
Please keep conversation down to a minimum so that the transcript can be...
Mr. York's trying to
get
comment
all
on the
this.
date.
Just 1 second. Angela just told me, Mrs. Gutierrez, she cannot make it June 19th.
July 10th is fine.
What about you? You know you...
Is that a quasi?
July 10th is good.
other members could read the transcript if Mr. York makes it available that haven't been here, so we get our 5 anyway. And I know Mr. York, he's good like that.
On June 9th, that's back to the...
No, June 19th
19th
or July 10th.
Angela already wasn't here for the first night. I think
Oh.
she's hoping that she can listen to the original testimony and then be afforded a vote at the future meeting.
Justin Flansville and
Angela,
Angela both cannot be here June 19th. I think we
Okay.
should make it the July
let me
10th.
make a note on that.
You should know for the quorum also.
Yeah.
July. When?
Okay, so then we will be looking at July 10th unless...
He's not here June 19th.
Woo, let's stop scheduling things for that night.
Think so.
Okay, so it'll have to be July 10th then.
Okay.
July 10th work for everybody?
My witness is yes. Alan, you okay with that?
It works for everybody? Okay. We need a motion, Mr. Jackson?
Yes, well, just so, is everyone in favor of continuing this matter on July 10th? All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. So this matter will be heard. This is David Herzog, is that the applicant? I don't have him.
Yes, SC 2314,
Mr.
man.
Jackson,
Yes,
just one thing I would like to ask before everybody leaves. Any transcripts that can be made available we can make it available, then any board member today, we can have a full board vote.
If the neighbors are willing to provide that, given that it was prepared at their cost.
I have to ask my client that question. I didn't
Neighbors
pay
are the
for it,
ones who
certainly.
So
solicited it on their own.
which one are we talking about? The first meeting?
First meeting.
Ready?
I mean,
I have an idea.
today's meeting, we had everybody here.
Our members can listen to tapes too.
Right, today's we won't need.
So I have an idea. My client will provide a certified transcript of the first hearing and distribute it to the board.
Okay.
There you go.
How's that?
Okay, members of the public, be advised that tonight's application, SD 2314 for David Herzog, has been tabled and will be continued at the July 10, 2018, 6 p.m. meeting, this building, but in the downstairs courtroom of our regular meeting times. No further notice will be provided.
Mr. Jackson, the only thing is you can hear something to sign that all the board members.
Yes, the board
Okay,
secretary should have that, that's
We have that
a
on
common
the
form.
website.
That's okay.
Okay, so like this, everybody can vote. You know, it's a complicated application, so I want everybody to vote.
Yep, okay, thank you. Move on in order? You'd like me to move on in order?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anybody have any time constraints? And I think number 2, we had the opposition.
Actually, I have a question on number 2, Mr. Jackson.
Please leave quietly.
All right, number 2, this is an application that was recently approved by the planning board. Within their application was a request for waivers from improving the rights-of-way around the property in the back, between this property and the fairways. The board approved the application, but denied part of the waiver for one of the rights-of-way, which is Weber Avenue. They are back to re-request that waiver. Now, Mr. Jackson and I had discussed about res judicata or double jeopardy, given that they've already requested this and the board had denied it. Mr. Jackson indicated that if the applicant were coming back with some sort of letter in support of not improving that right-of-way, either from the township committee or from the neighbors, then that would be new information that would
Yes.
prevent res judicata.
Yes.
I have not been provided any of that information from that
As far as I know,
applicant.
the neighbors don't
As far
want
as
it.
I know, the applicant is back to request something you recently denied with no further information to change your mind.
Are there any neighbors here?
Huh?
Are there any neighbors here in that? Was there anybody on application 2274 Shiva Ari Sacha?
Yes, we are here on that application, but there's no
Any
neighbors,
opposition?
no.
Nobody from the fairways?
There,
no.
you know, the res judicata on that specific issue, there were people opposed to it. I know Mr. Abde called me about that. Mr. Robinson, where are they tonight?
And it was advertised for tonight.
Yeah, but where are they? What happened to them? Do you know?
Meaning the objectors? No, nobody is, I mean, there were objectors to the application, this was not one of their objections. And
The
it's
issue is
still not,
Mr.
but-
Hobday had called us and indicated that a number of the board members objected to waiving the requirement to improve that right-of-way. So we're just surprised he's not here, because he had specifically asked us to carry to a date when he could come to object.
Was this that date?
Yes.
Ah, okay.
I know, he called me in my office, he was traveling, and
Yeah.
I'm just surprised.
He was notified of this date.
Hold on, I might even have this from when he called me. I could possibly.
Yeah, they provided notice for this meeting. They mailed notice for this meeting.
the neighbor here who does not want to vote.
I just
We
think.
said that we denied the waiver.
They were requesting a
One at
waiver
a time,
from
please.
improving all 3 roads along the back of their property that fronts on Cross. The board was fine with 2 of them, but wanted the 3rd side improved because there are some other properties in the back that they may have provided access to. If you'll recall, the board had required that the applicant install some berms to prevent the Fairways residents from having headlights on that road that were affecting their backyards and stuff.
So why are we changing like you asked me
They're
before?
back saying,
Unless the
thanks for
neighbors
the
want it.
approval, but can you also give us this waiver that you already denied
If I
us?
remember, the next property is also owned by Yeshiva, and we're concerned that it's gonna be, if they don't finish it, then it's gonna be one big property. We're well aware that it's also owned by the same. owner.
1 second.
Yes, there is, right in your plan stack. Oh, yeah, there's a whole set, and a copy of the minutes and the resolution from the last meeting, as well as the correspondence request from the applicant. And the board had also given them an entire year to get the committee to vacate that roadway, in which case they wouldn't need to improve it. But they've come back a month later to say, we we don't want
I don't
to.
think the township wants to vacate property right now.
Agreed, but there was significant time granted by the board for them to work on it.
I took the unusual, I just called Mr. Hobday, and only because I know he was involved in this, he called me at my office, he asked the adjournment. He's a regular here, I'm surprised he's not here. I just called him, I spoke to him, he indicated that he just got in from vacation or somewhere, he's gonna come over here tonight. So maybe we could put
Go to
this,
the next one?
I'll go to the next one, and then,
What Ali said before, do you feel if there's no neighbors objecting to it, do they have a right to come back?
I
and sometime
think
we
that
vote on it?
this is a relief of a condition. I think the board can always consider that. You can also say, we heard it once, and we're not going to hear it one. That's res judicata. I think that's a judicial management tool that the board has at its disposal, so that you don't say no, and they come back the next week, no, no, no. You have to ask yourself if there's changed circumstances, which could either be the passage of time, or it could be that maybe now it makes more sense in the light of what they have to say tonight. So I would wait to hear what they have to say. And one of the options at the end is to say, we already decided this, no. Or you could say, all right, we're persuaded, we should change our mind, or there's new information that makes the decision different. Or you could stop it right now and say, no, we're not gonna even listen to this.
So let's be fair to Mr. Hobday, wait a few minutes till he comes.
Do you want
Let's
to
go
move on to
number
the
three
next
first.
one?
But can I ask one question? If Mr. Hotday comes, then we will be able to present our new evidence.
If he comes
That's
early
what we'll
enough.
decide at the end of the.
Is he coming early enough?
He said he'd be right over, I don't know what that means.
Got an hour.
I will.
All right, so
Please be quiet in the audience.
The next-
Everything's being recorded.
the next application is SD 2010 by Joseph Lipschitz. This was a previous approval that has been attempting to come back under correspondence, and the board wasn't happy with doing it under correspondence, so they're here, scheduled under public hearing, I believe, with John's direction. They
It's just
They
like
are
the sign
approved,
works?
they are constructed, they note, they originally submitted paperwork to you, which you have here, that indicates they're looking for a waiver from installing curb and sidewalks on Route 9, but I've since been told that their notice, only notice for the waiver for sidewalks.
That's all the applicant is looking for, is the
I'm sorry,
waiver
the
for
other way
curb.
around. The waiver for
The
curb. and they will
sidewalks
install
we're gonna put
sidewalks.
in.
So just one second. Terry, do you have any understanding of this application?
I don't think we have an input on that.
I didn't forward it to his office.
Yeah, it's a very simple,
Okay, so,
Hold on.
so it's an amended application.
Can I please, without a court reporter, it's hard, and I have no idea how well this equipment tonight is working, so if we
Please
could
be
please
quiet.
just be quiet, especially Mr. Carr. Please raise your hand. Do you swear a firm testimony you'll give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth?
I do. Ryan Flannery Jackson, New Jersey, licensed professional engineer, professional planner. Very simple. We have the rear of the lots go out to Route 9. You've had other people come in and say they got a letter from DOT. DOT's putting in curb, doing road widening, doing certain things. He got the same letter. If we put curb in here today, it's gonna get ripped out. It's gonna be in the wrong place. It serves no good. We're asking for a waiver for just the curb. We're gonna put the sidewalk in, we'll bond for the sidewalk, we'll put the sidewalk in, the state's gonna put the curb in, we're gonna wait if we can. If the state doesn't put it in within 2 years, we'll make our best guess of where it's gonna be, and hope they don't have to rip out the sidewalk and re-put it in, but
Will you bond for
theoretically.
it? Are you ready to
I
bond for
believe
the?
it's
Yes,
already bonded
yes,
for,
we're certainly,
actually.
yes, we don't want any waiver on the sidewalk, I don't know how that got in there.
How about the curb?
The curb we don't want to put in, because wherever we put it, it's
Did
gonna
you
be.
bond for the curb?
I don't think did they bond
I'm
for the
sorry,
curb?
originally it was designed for curb and sidewalk, it's bonded for both.
So how about if you don't get your bond back until either you put it in or the state puts it in?
Curb?
Curb and sidewalk.
Well, we understand the sidewalk, we agree.
But curb also.
The curb also, we have a real problem putting curb in, because you have to ask the DOT, and the DOT says, we don't want you putting
So
in it.
either
'cause
you
we're
put it in or the state.
Yeah, that's what he said, I think. Let me ask you a
That's not what he
question.
said, that's not what he said, let's have one second, that's not what he said.
No, yes, if that's the best we can do, we didn't want to put curb in. We wanted to, 2 years from now, if the DOT is saying in 6 months, they're gonna put the curb in, then we would put the sidewalk in it, we'd find the best information we could get from them, and I know how
The sidewalks
difficult.
right now.
What's that?
Put the sidewalks in right away,
Well,
just,
if you put the
just
side-
bond for the curbs.
If you put the sidewalks in right away, when they put the curb, it's at different elevations, the sidewalk's in the wrong place.
The
We,
sidewalk will have to come out too.
yes. We'd rather wait, if we get 2 years down the road and we're in the same situation, we wanna get our bond back, then we're gonna have to set it back a couple feet or do something creative on the sidewalk.
You can't set it back, because the sidewalks have to go in a straight line.
But you can start them at one point. We'd have to do something creative that I'm hoping, I hear on the scoop, I hear from the mayor, I hear in the paper, and John's sitting over there, I know he heard in 1960 they were gonna do it. But I think the curb is a reality at this point. The state will put it in, we know where it's in, as soon as their forms are there, we'll put our forms for the sidewalk, we'll put the sidewalk in. 2 years from now, if the state is still dragging us along, and we'll put the sidewalk in the best we can, and it'll get ripped out.
Could you put the sidewalk and curb in the best you can, in 2 years?
Why would we waste the money on curb that's not doing anything?
For safety.
Well, maybe there another
The
60
sidewalk
years.
going up till there, the sidewalk going past it.
Well,
On the opposite side, there's no sidewalk, and there's a lot of kids and pedestrians on Shabbos and Yom Tov.
I have a problem with no curbs. It's a safety issue. Cars can go right
Well,
on the...
there's a lot of places, the RSIS allows sidewalk without curb, the county typically sets the...
Brian, sorry, what is it? So it's the road pavement, grass, and then the sidewalk?
The road pavement, grass, and then a sidewalk.
What can we put there as a...
What the county does is make you set it back a little further, so we could
put
do
a
the
guardrail
sidewalk
or
in an
something?
easement.
Why a guardrail? Why can they?
I mean, somebody's gonna have to rip it out in 2 years.
Okay,
Rip it out in 2 years.
it's not that much of a money, and it's 2 years, and it's a lot of safety.
If the board would prefer, the site's built, the township manager has told the engineer that he has authorization to issue TCOs for the property, even though the curb and sidewalk isn't in yet, and it was required by this board. Realistically, you could let the applicant ride on the TCO, leave the bond sitting there
They
for
can't.
another 6 months or a year, and let them make the request in another year if you're not comfortable
Why does it
denying
have
or
to-
granting
Why
the
don't we do
request
that?
now.
That makes
Well, I
sense.
think, Ali, a TCO was maximum for 6 months.
Well, they would just have to do another 6 months.
I don't
Or
know.
come back in 6 months and ask the board, and if they're ready, ask the board at that time if they're ready to make a decision. It just, I feel like there's a lot of hesitation here, and I don't feel that there's an absolute need that it has to be a decision made right now.
Is it a money factor now with the
Well, the TCO is a problem for the homeowners, it's a problem for the developer, the township it makes extra work for. What the county does if there's no curb is they set the sidewalk back a little further, so you provide separation rather than a curb. We could do that, we could put trees in between the sidewalk and the grass, so that...
As far as I know, the township will only give you a TCO even if you bond for it, for 2 years. I don't think they'll give.
Well, if you have an item that's shown on the plan, and you don't have a waiver, so if we don't have a waiver for the curb, all we're gonna get is TCOs until the curb is put in.
Mr. Flannery, why do I think that there's something more to this? What's the big deal with curbs for 3 or 4 lots?
Is it money?
Yeah, but I have a feeling that when you do a curb on a state highway, that there's a lot more to it than just putting a curb.
Well, there is.
And what's what are we talking about here in dollars?
Well, first of all, you gotta get a permit from the state, and the state doesn't wanna give you that permit because they're drawing up plans on where they're gonna put the curb in. So they know if you put curb in, they're gonna be ripping that curb out, so it's an additional expense for the curb. We need a permit from the state in order to put the curb in.
Well, that's a different issue. If they will give you the permit.
That's right.
If you move it back on your property, the curb and sidewalks, and then rip it out.
Putting curb on the applicant's property would be silly. Putting the sidewalk on the applicant's property is something we can do, and the applicant.
But that's only part of the answer. What's the estimate
like
expense for this whole thing for these curbs?
Well, I think the cost of the curb isn't the factor
Right.
as much as
TCO.
getting the permit.
The engineering, the whole thing, what's the soft
My
cost?
question
and
to
the
you
hard
again,
cost?
how much will the curbs cost?
conditions more
If you put it on the
Excuse me,
applicant's property?
we're all talking at once, and with the record, that's really hard. And I'm the worst offender, so we should try to, remember we said we were gonna do it through the
Right.
chair? Mr. Herzl, please,
Okay,
You're gonna be looking at tens of thousands of dollars to put the curb in and get the permits, and if you put them on your property, we know for a fact, it's just
gonna be
getting
ripped
torn
out.
out. It's ridiculous. If we put the sidewalk on the property in an easement, the sidewalk will be there forever, it'll provide the access, and the state can do whatever they do on the road.
And what
Unless they
pushes up-
change the elevations.
Well, if you're
Then the
far,
sidewalk
no,
becomes-
if you're far enough back, there's the availability to slope up or down to the sidewalk.
and
So
putting up-
the only way we're just not pissing tens of thousands of dollars away.
Is that a legal term?
Yes, it's an engineering term.
It's an engineering.
Sophomore year at college, they teach you the.
My mother used to use that.
Is there anything else?
There's no stormwater involved,
Did she
right?
go to-
It usually had to do with money, though.
Did she go to engineering school?
Okay,
You have to
Brian,
compensate for that in the drainage then too, so it's another hardship.
is there anything you can put for a safety issue instead of the
Yes,
curbs?
we could put trees, we could put a
And
berm.
Is that cheaper than curbs? If you can screen
And
rectangles?
if we put a berm,
Right.
when the state comes through, they just push it with a machine, you're not breaking anything up.
And the berm is a safety issue, won't let the...
It'll be a berm that'll accomplish the same thing that the,
And stop a car from getting on to.
as much as a
Then the car goes
curb.
up onto the
As
second
much
story of
as
the
a
house,
curb.
it's like a
Yeah.
ramp.
As much as a curb, that's what a curb does. And the curb, to some extent, if people hit the curb, they lose control. As opposed to the berm, it won't be that bad a situation.
Brian, have you reached out to the state about where they want to put the curb?
I got hired for this 2 weeks ago. He's got a different
okay.
engineer working on the job.
State won't get
But
on
I have reached out to the state on other applications, and right now, they don't want to, we have one job where we're going probably 3 years
Okay, Mr.
and
Flannery.
trying to get a permit.
Mr. Flannery, I think, my personal opinion, we'll wait to hear from the board. Put the sidewalks on your property and put a berm instead over there, and...
The applicant would appreciate that, and the homeowners will appreciate it. Everybody can move
I don't
forward.
know, we'll have to hear from the board.
Just a quick question.
Yeah,
What
that's
stops
it.
the berm from being washed away where a curb would direct flow of water
They'll-
and the berm is dirt?
There'll be a 2-year maintenance bond on it. Terry's office is not gonna let the berm get washed away. And you hydroseed it, or if the erosion is that good, they'll have to put soil matting down. You can put berms that aren't gonna go down, and I have confidence. The last engineer that was here wasn't very.
This is also subject to Ocean County soil
Yes.
approval and enforcement as
Yes.
well.
Yeah, the last engineer that wasn't here wasn't as confident as Terry, but I have all the confidence in the world.
Great.
Mr. Rennet.
Yeah, what happens if like in 5 years from now, the state's still gonna put in, curb?
Doesn't matter, we have a berm that's better, and we have a sidewalk.
So.
You mean you'll maintain the berm as long as?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think this board's been trying to get, curb and sidewalk throughout the whole township.
The board's been trying to get sidewalk, and curb normally
No,
goes
curb
along
and
with the
sidewalk.
sidewalk. Curb normally goes along with the sidewalk. I don't think anybody's been saying we need the curb, we need the sidewalk for people to walk on. We have an unusual situation, we're on a state highway, so nobody's gonna come in on
Why
other,
can't you bond for curb and sidewalk?
because then we get a TCO, and it's problems for financing, it's problems for the builder. The township has to keep going back out, they get to charge for it, but they gotta keep going back out.
Mr. Herzl, what I'd recommend, I mean, we tend to debate things back and forth. I recommend you close the matter, board deliberates amongst itself, motion, second, and then the board decides what direction wants. So I think you've heard
Are you
everything.
finished with your testimony?
I-
One question.
Elevation of the sidewalk is gonna be too high, or the curb? Can you make the curb higher?
You don't know till you get the design of the highway.
No, of the current sidewalk now.
Well, the sidewalk's now gonna be back on the property, so we'll take a look at where from a logical engineering perspective, the edge of the pavement would be. Then we factor up to the 8-inch curb, and then we say where the sidewalk should be. If we picked wrong, the state has all this area to put in a little swale or a little berm so that the sidewalk can work. When the sidewalk is 3 or 4 feet from the curb, it has to be pretty much a couple inches higher than the curb, or it's a problem. It ponds water. When you're that far back, it's no longer a problem. There's availability to make the grade work.
And you go with your sidewalks and
How far?
the place where eventually the DOT is gonna put in their sidewalks?
Well, our sidewalk's gonna be set back a little further, and as part of the bond for the sidewalk, we'll bond for connections at each of the end. So the people walking down will come a little further onto our property, be further away from the road. There'll be some nice vegetation in between
How
them.
far, how far?
Whatever Terry,
Is it still the self-storage or is it the gas station?
Terry, is that okay with you?
it's the 3 lots. There's the doctor's office on the corner.
Right.
Then you have the 4 lots, and then there's 3 existing homes that are there.
Can you put in front of that also,
Uh,
please?
You get an application shortly with that.
Yeah, we're getting?
Yes, yes.
Okay, Terry wants to say.
Meanwhile, can we put something?
1 second.
If the board is comfortable with the request, we will work out the details with township engineering and the manager.
Okay, thank you.
So, did the state already give you a letter of where they're putting?
The state gave us a letter, said they're doing it with a plan that
Did they,
should
did
have been
they
on.
give you a plan?
It was kind of a plan, it should have been on tissue paper, so we could have made some use out of it.
But they sent you a survey, right? They sent you, where they gonna put it?
They sent you a map, you can't build from that.
Do you have an educated guess where the curb is gonna be?
We will study it and get an educated guess. And if you have a center line of the road, you have information.
So there may
and-
be
And
two-
with the additional setback, it'll work.
So there may be 2 sidewalks at some point?
No.
No, there's gonna be
connected.
one sidewalk, the people,
Well, if the DOT puts in their sidewalk.
DOT's not gonna put in a sidewalk.
They'll just connect it.
They'll connect, yeah.
It'll curve.
It might wiggle.
But if they already went out across the whole Route 9, they sent out letters, and they sent out surveys of what they're doing, right?
Now they're working on design plans. I worked at the DOT, I know how that goes.
But the design plans.
The design plans will have information, and once that's done, and it would be nice if it was done in 2 months, and then we could just do it that way.
There's some mention of it.
I already saw the design, they already had design plans for the property.
I haven't seen fully engineered plans. I've seen concept plans, I've seen, and as Mr. Schmuckler says, they've gotten 3 different plans on this. His firm is the one working on it, and every time you ask him, you get a new plan.
Is there any utility poles that have to be removed?
There's probably utility poles there. If we're doing the sidewalk further back, we won't need to move them, so that'd be something else that in combination with the berm would make sure that the people on the sidewalk are safe.
Okay, thank you. Any board members have any questions? Okay, I'll open it to the public. Anybody from the public like to be heard on this application? Seeing no one, we'll close it to the public. We'll ask for a motion on this.
I'll move to allow the sidewalk to be further in.
And
With berm, yeah.
with the berm. Okay. Do we have a second?
And can we restrict it, have to do within 6 months?
Okay, Dave seconds it. Roll call. Yeah, what?
Can we restrict it, have to do it in a certain amount of time, or otherwise the
They'll do it right away.
They're gonna do it right away
Right away.
because they wanna get permanent CO.
Right, right away.
They're motivated.
all approved?
Yeah.
Mr. Franklin,
Coke.
Mr. Garfield,
Yes.
Mr. Sable,
No.
Mr. Herzl,
Yes.
Mr. Renner,
Abstain.
Mr. Isaacson,
Mix it up a little bit.
Mr. Graffos,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer.
No.
What is the
That's
tally?
3 yes, 3 no, and an abstain.
That's a denial.
Motion doesn't
Denial.
pass.
That's a denial.
Okay, so what does that mean?
That means that the application is denied.
I understand.
The request is there for you.
So then it reverts back to.
I'm sorry, hold on, he's telling me I'm wrong.
Yeah, I thought I counted 4
That's 4
yeses.
yeses, I'm
We're
sorry.
having a recount and on election. night.
Recount!
That's right.
I missed one. Mr. Garfield, Mr. Herzl, Mr. Isaacson, Mr. Graffos, 4 yeses, so it does
All
pass.
right.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next, is Mr. Hopton here?
I don't believe so, you wanna just keep going?
We'll go to the next one.
Okay. Application SP 2287 for 1975 Swarthmore Avenue LLC. It's a major site plan for an addition to an existing warehouse on Swarthmore Avenue. I'll let Terry go over any variances or relief that may be required.
Okay, Terry, you want to go through the report?
Yes, I believe everyone has a copy of our May 9th letter. We're going to talk about submission waivers first. Bottom of page 2, going to page 3, submission waivers include traffic study, topos and contours within 200 feet, man-made features, EIS and tree protection management. Submission waiver was from a full traffic study. They have provided a trip generation statement. We support the waiver for hearing purposes with the understanding that the applicants are going to provide testimony in terms of traffic concerns to the board's satisfaction. Submission waivers with respect to B-site features, we support those because we feel there's enough information for the design. Submission waiver has been requested from the EIS. We support this waiver. The applicants indicate an NJDP CAFR permit modification will be required, and they will be providing an environmental compliance statement as part of the DEP process. And finally, the tree protection management waiver we support for hearing purposes only.
We'll have a motion to go along with engineer's recommendation. Second, all in favor? Aye.
This is, hang on. SP 2287, all right. Going under zoning, our comment 2, there is a variance with respect to a sign identification, sign setback regarding off-street parking. We need testimony as to whether or not a variance is required based upon operations. I'm sure you will give testimony based on that.
We'll deal with that.
And under design waivers, we have design waivers requested, providing sidewalk along the frontage, providing a shade tree and utility easement along the frontage, and street trees, as well as the perimeter buffer per 18803 E2A of the UDO. I believe that's all the review.
Thank you.
Yes. Good evening, my name is Jan Wouters, I'm a partner in the firm of Bathgate, Wardner & Wolf in Lakewood. As what you vote indicated, this is an application for 1975 Swarthmore Avenue LLC for a preliminary and final site plan approval to construct a 36,000 square foot addition to an existing 53,980 square foot building. The property is located in the M1 zone. We reviewed the design waivers. The applicant is seeking a variance for the site identification sign setback. This is an existing condition. The sign has been there forever, and 6.9 feet setback, and the current setback is 15 feet. I'd like to now have Jeff Carr of Lindstrom, Diesler and Carr, professional engineer, describe the plan and address the issues in Remington's May 9th letter.
Swear affirm testimony to give before the board with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do. Jeffrey J. Carr, C-A-R-R, principal with the firm of Lindstrom, Diesler and Carr, Brick.
Have you prepared this resolution?
Yes, I have. I'm a licensed professional engineer, licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. This is an application. It's on Swarthmore Avenue. The exhibit here is just one of the sheets out of the set, sheet 3 of 10. It's labeled site plan. Effectively, this is a semi-developed or market. It's partially developed now. It's developed on the right-hand side. There's an existing building of approximately 54,000 square feet with parking and access on the right side of the property. And we're simply expanding it with an addition on the left-hand side and providing additional parking and loading and access onto Swarthmore on that side. The addition will be approximately 36,000 square feet.
There's 2 units in it.
It's labeled as two units, so it's going to be constructed steel-wise and what have you as 2 units. However, the owner of the building right now has an additional facility on Rutgers Boulevard, and right now he's going to use the entire thing himself. Basically, he's at capacity in his existing warehouse. So this will be a minimal impact in the area, though we've designed it for ultimately, because you never know what's going to happen, for loading docks, parking area, and what have you. So you can see in the review letters that we've designed this to accommodate what potentially could be in there. But for now, the owner is going to occupy it himself. It's going to be overflow warehousing for his existing facility. He anticipates approximately 4 to 6 employees being in this building here, and approximately 2 to 4 vehicles or truck deliveries per day for warehousing. Visitors are essentially minimal, since this is really not the center of his business. The center of the business is on Rutgers Boulevard. That this will be basically overflow warehousing for his existing use.
But this wouldn't be the owner occupied, you rent it out as a warehouse. Are you seeking any variances on parking?
No, we're not. And as he indicated, the owner occupied portion is going to be very minimal for now, but it's designed so that ultimately, if it's subdivided into 2 units, it has more than adequate parking, and now the current ordinance has 2 different parking ratios, and you'll see the calculations on that. So we'll have more than enough parking if it was ultimately developed with a different type of user.
What kind of user is there now? What kind of warehouse?
Nito. I believe it, Nito is,
Nito's
Nito.
Nito's the business.
Nito is the business, and it's just warehousing, no production, just product in and product out.
Right.
What type of product?
Chemicals?
No.
Non-chemicals,
No.
Wholesale products. The products that will be going in the addition are, the applicant is in the business of amusement fulfillment technology, in other words, prizes, which he imports from all over the world. And so that's what's coming in, and that's what's going out. No hazardous material, no unboxing, no reboxing, and Mr. Carr will describe later, even when it comes to refuse, the corrugated, and there is quite a lot of corrugated in this type of use, is actually used in a trash compactor and then sold. So it's not even subject to refuse collection.
Are there any variances on this application?
The only variance we're asking for is for the site
Existing
identification.
sign, right.
Right.
And that's existing on the site already. There's no change to that. There's going to be no new signage for this portion of the
You're not
development.
adding any new variances to this?
That's correct, no new variances.
No. Okay. So anything in the report that you want to go through report, anything you don't?
I can go through the report, but you
agree with
simply
everything?
stated, I think for the most part, it's technical requirements.
And you agree with the whole
We
report?
can meet all of those technical requirements. Stormwater, there's an existing detention basin here. We're gonna redesign that, actually improve it. Right now, it was designed the old way where you basically, water comes in and there's a big pipe and water goes out. We're actually gonna expand it, control the water better, so there's gonna be less discharge from the site, more recharge on the site, so environmentally it's going to be better. And we're gonna take care of some of that water that was not taken care of on the old site.
Did you get that today?
Yes.
I did. When he finished, I was gonna.
Any board members have any questions?
This is a very nice area in the front.
Just a
Now,
couple of.
currently.
Yes, and it's
Very
it's,
nice.
right, and that's gonna stay that way. In fact, there's some
Very
wooded
minimal.
area that we're gonna maintain, so we'll kind of buffer the
Do we need that
proposed
parking?
I'm sorry?
Do we need that parking? Can we extend that far?
This parking here, we designed it so that we meet it, so that whatever use ever comes in here, we meet those requirements.
Yes, it's necessary. The plan was approved by the Lakewood Industrial Commission.
What's with sidewalks? Do you have any sidewalks there?
No sidewalks.
We are asking for the following design waivers, sidewalks along the frontage, none are existing, and we're not proposing any. Providing shade tree and utility easements along the frontage, again, none are proposed. Providing straight trees along the site frontage, and provision of a 25-foot buffer as required by the UDO. This is an existing facility. All we're basically doing is expanding the footprint. Nothing is changing, other than it's going to be a little larger. It's been.
We'll be taking away a lot of trees, though.
No.
In the new property.
Yes, in the rear of the site, but we're gonna maintain a wooded area in the
And
front of the
waiver
site.
requested is on the old, providing new shade trees is on the old property?
There's already trees along the frontage there, there's a wooded area along the frontage of that, and we're gonna maintain a wooded area on either side of our driveway. You can see our plan on the left-hand side, there'll be a treed area that will remain, and on the front area, in front of the addition part, they'll be there, and of course, that lawn area, that basin lawn area will remain as it is.
So where is the waiver requested for which part? Which
Well, typically, you'll plant street trees in like every 50 feet along a street, but we don't see the need from that. If you look at our site plan, you'll see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 trees along the basin area, and then you'll see 2 wooded areas, so obviously there's no need to plant trees in the wooded area. So even though we don't have that shade tree line of row of trees that you would normally see in a street tree easement, we effectively have more trees than what you normally see.
Mr. Jackson, going back to the issue of sidewalks. I know in the industrial commission we spoke about it, sir. The mayor has said that he wants sidewalks all over town.
Right, so, I think you have to decide if the industrial park, if it matters. People do walk and ride their bikes
There's
to
a lot
work.
of schools there.
I specifically.
Now we get schools there?
Okay,
Angela.
I
She's the mayor's
specifically asked the
designee.
mayor about the industrial park, and he said 100% sidewalks.
It did come up at the plan review meeting, and they were advised by the professionals that the board may want that. We kind of said it's been a little unclear, it's been this 50-50 back and forth
And
question.
there's a lot
whether
of
or not it's
schools on
appropriate.
Swaffham.
There's one right there.
There's one right there.
Oh,
Rob.
it's beside them, it's right there.
There's a lot of schools. I know a
Okay,
few.
so I'm gonna bring this up.
I think recently the board required it for a couple, and the applicants thought it was ridiculous, but if anything, you're being consistent.
We've had ones where we
Yes.
have required it, and we've had ones where we have not required it, that have been isolated and in a certain area.
I mean,
But-
I'll say that, I know that it's gone different ways, and then we had some recent applications where the question came up, and then since then, the position's been 100% even in industrial park.
And one way to look at it is this going to be such a burden on this business? What is it, a couple hundred feet of sidewalk and?
It's an entire block, it's an entire.
Yeah, it's a
not
entire
gonna be in the
block.
middle of nowhere. It's gonna look nice.
You're shaking your head,
I think eventually there's gonna be sidewalks all over. Okay.
We understand.
Okay. Any other questions from any board members? We'll open to the public. Anyone from the public like to be heard in this application? Seeing no one, close the public. I will ask for a motion.
I'll move to approve with sidewalk.
I'll second
Okay.
it. I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Franklin?
Yes.
Mr. Garfield?
Yes.
Mr. Sable?
Yes.
Mr. Herzl?
Yes.
Mr. Renner? Mr. Isaacson?
Yes.
Mr. Graffos?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hopday is here, would you like to go back to that, what we
I
said?
think, Mr. Jackson, you set a precedent.
What's that?
The board wants sidewalks in industrial parks.
Well, there we go.
And I think, we just heard from Angela, directly from the mayor, I heard the vote. She's amazed this is me.
The mayor obviously is influenced by what the public tells him, but we hear it from so many people, sidewalks and the board, that's not a new thing.
I mean, I work on Airport Road, there are young boys that walk on Airport Road and say hitchhike too, which makes me nervous for them,
Mr. Jackson, the only way, if you tell me that the industrial commission
Right.
supersedes us, and they feel that.
They don't.
If they were that concerned, they could certainly send a letter to us, and I think even the industrial commission is split, on what
I
they.
know that ours is always subject to Ocean County approval. Are we subject to industrial commission? I don't know.
Not for nothing, the cars in the industrial park go 100 miles an hour.
oh yeah.
All right, we're gonna move
It's like
back
a
to,
raceway.
Number two.
It's definitely a high-speed area, it's a place for cycling.
Mr. Hopday, welcome back from your vacation.
Thank you.
the board is considering Yeshiva or Yosoka Academy, which is a reconsideration of a condition the board had imposed to improve Weber Avenue. I'll let Mr. York take it from there.
Good evening, Michael York, Helen York and Jacobus on behalf of the applicant. To a certain extent, yes, we are re-requesting a waiver, as Ally discussed earlier in the night, but not really. When the board initially denied the waiver request and required that we do off-site or off-track improvements in accordance with Chapter 20, Section 116. We had a chance to look at it after the fact, because truthfully we didn't look into it during the application process. The problem is the board's requiring that my applicant do improvements to not his own property. That's fine, the board can make that requirement, just like you probably just did, and I wasn't paying 100%
Somebody else's
attention.
property?
Yes, off track, meaning you want us to maintain the, specifically,
Township property, but not the...
correct.
That's
Township
sidewalks
property,
and
not,
curbs.
I shouldn't say something.
That's not off track.
Well, the
It's
piece you
technically off
want,
your property line, but it's in your right of way.
Well,
it's off track. I think we can agree it's off track. Yeah, I mean, I can get into that with you, I agree, but it is off track.
Except
We
for
have
the
no
underlying fee that belongs to the property owner in front of it, so keep that.
Correct, but the problem is the board can require that we do that as long as we, in theory, kick into a till, so to speak. Meaning, just like sidewalks, everybody who has the benefit of those sidewalks has to kick into the payment for those sidewalks. My client would be willing to pay his pro rata share of those improvements, but shouldn't be required to do it all on his own. And so, yes, we'd love the waiver if the board so chooses to grant that, but what we're really here for is to tell the board that we don't want it at all. We don't want to be required to do it unless the board is going to change the ordinance and require the neighboring property owners to.
Terry, is that correct, according to your opinion? Who's responsible for putting in that road and
He's
sidewalk?
saying you're requiring off-track improvements by requiring the improvement of Weber Avenue, which is along this property.
Why would it be off, I mean, you have a responsibility along your frontage.
Right, along with whoever else has frontage on Weber.
Maybe he would have to the midpoint.
Correct.
Is his point.
Not all of
The
it,
board could require that they do up to the center line.
which would be kind of crazy just to build half of it.
There is precedent for that.
Right.
To where if when someone comes and develops the other side of the street, then they would do that.
Why don't you show us where this road is and why you think it
Sure.
doesn't make sense to put a road? Why don't you just
No problem.
If
refresh
he
the
thinks it
board?
makes sense to make a road, it just doesn't want to.
No,
We didn't think it
no,
made sense.
it doesn't. We didn't think it made sense the
Oh,
first
okay.
time we were here, but we'll do,
Just
we'll explain
show-
again.
Okay,
What are we talking about?
this is cross streets at the bottom of the map. This is fairways at Lake Ridge on the east side.
Before
and
you
the
go
south
much
side.
further, is my witness sworn in from the last time you were
Just
here?
swear from testimony to give before this board with the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
I do. Glenn Lyons, Lakewood, New Jersey.
And
Professional
you're-
engineer,
and the
professional
board
planner, and I've been
Yes,
here
makes sense.
3 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Is this the map that you gave last time?
Yes, this is the exact same map out of the,
Is it the same? I know the applicant
It's not
has
marked,
submitted
it's
for
marked.
resolution compliance,
Um,
and they have not added that roadway in.
correct.
So this is the old map. They have made revisions since this and submitted for resolution compliance, but have not added the roadway because they
We
knew they
still
would come back
didn't
and
add
ask
the
you to waive
roadway
it
in
again.
because, so this is the property we're talking about. There are paper streets on the east, south, west side. There is a lot across Weber Avenue from us. They have access to Sharon Avenue, which is partially improved already.
Well, why didn't the township
Right.
vacate it?
What?
Why didn't the township vacate that paper
Because they
street?
won't vacate anything.
Is that the one that there was another school on top that didn't want it to be vacated?
No, no, this is Fairways,
application?
They don't want, Fairways has told us, at the original application we had at the zoning board, when we've been here before, they don't want these right-of-ways improved. They don't want Baker Avenue improved, they don't want Rudd Street improved. But, you know, our other side is Weber. We have no need for these streets, and really what, you know, we have all our access on Cross Street. To require us to pay them, we have no use for them. I mean, it's not like we're accessing those streets. And, you know.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, if I may, I believe we didn't want to grant the design waiver because we wanted there to be available on-street parking in addition to what was.
No.
I believe that's what.
No. We want all streets to be improved, because
Right.
we have to have one day, we need to
Do you have any
road.
variance on parking on that?
This is a dead end, and
No.
it's a dead end a block earlier that goes down to no one, right?
What's on-
So
what's-
Rudd Street goes nowhere, it's never gonna get,
Rudd Street
would
is,
go all the way out to the right, wouldn't it?
Rudd Street goes down to the west a little bit along the back of the fairways. Red Street ends behind our property. It was only put in, as far as I've been advised, because when they did the new section of the fairways, whatever the master's collection at the fairways, whatever that new development was, they had to bring sewer through there, so they brought the sewer in.
So
and
where
they
where could Rudd Street go?
From, well,
From
right
there,
behind
and
our
over there,
property could go,
And then it goes that way to where?
could go, it doesn't go anywhere. There,
Well, I mean, where
This-
could it go?
Where could it go?
this way.
Yeah, it ends at a
I
right
didn't bring
only, I believe,
it,
right?
it ends at the fairways. This, there's like 3 or 4 blocks here. Fairways is here, fairways is behind us, fairways is on the other end.
There's another right of way, isn't it?
There may be another right of way.
I see
Yeah.
Baker, Weber, Spartan, and then
Yeah.
there's another one right here.
Rudd goes to whatever this is right here that's cut off. What's that? That's what they're asking. It doesn't go nowhere.
Right, and then it end, and then.
You even have it on Google Maps.
just Weber Avenue.
Spartan, what about the next one?
300 cross.
Probably not, because paper street.
Yeah, 'cause
And then
Weber
it
Avenue
ends
would
at
not
the
be on.
fairways property line, which is this start zone line. So, at the most.
So which one are we saying over here to improve? This one?
You want this one, you want this one approved.
And this goes,
This is Weber.
what's over here in these 2 blocks?
There's 2 houses on the block next to us, and I believe there are houses, and I don't know for sure, on the other side of Spartan.
What's the other side of Weber? Is there private houses? How many lots are there?
There are,
There's lots, block 528, lot 1.
right.
Let John show them, it's gonna help you.
So we're over here?
Let's see that over here too.
Can I, please, Mr. Lyons, he's passing out documents. Please, everyone,
Where's Weber?
the board is trying to get their orientation looking at aerial photographs that Mr. Lyons passed out.
He's looking at it.
There's another one.
He's got a better one than that, because it's
And someone right here shows the
fairways here and
You see that?
So we're saying to improve.
fairways show this piece.
Yes.
There looks like houses.
Rudd's partially
Rudd is partially there?
From where to where?
It's shown on their plan.
Oh, I see, from here.
To, I guess, probably all the way to the end. That's where this comes from. This is all the way to Fairways.
This one is set here.
Mr. Rudd is this over here?
All right, everyone, please, Mr. Herzl.
Yeah, that here's the sewer.
On the other side of Weber Street.
Ally, wait, we're all talking at once. Wait, Mr. Herzl has a question for the applicant. He can't.
On the other side of Weber Street is a house that fronts on Cross Street, and there is a large lot that has a building on it that was a house used as a yeshiva.
How do you get to block 528, lot 1, if Weber Street is not?
The one that your finger's on, right there, how do you get there?
How do you get there? You can go, it has a driveway all the way out to Cross Street.
So
It
it's
also,
a flag lot?
it also front, no, it,
It is a flag lot.
no,
You
it
have lot
fronts
3
on.
and lot 1.
Lot 3, lot 8, and lot 1. Yes.
If lot 8 and lot 1 front on, also have frontage on Spartan, which is partially improved.
What do you mean partially improved?
It's not a township, it's a partially paved, partially gravelled township right of way. Okay, so if you, Spartan Avenue provides access right now to block 525, lot 1.02. That was what's shown on the Google map that I had handed out. Shows this Spartan Avenue as paved. So there is paved access on the west side of the lots we're concerned about, which is lot 8 and lot 1 of block 528. So, again, which was my testimony, there's no need for Weber. These people can access Spartan. They have frontage on Spartan now.
Spartan's not an approved road, it's a developed road, no,
It's a partial, it's providing access right now to this house. It is paved. There is a street sign out on Cross Street that says Spartan Avenue. You can drive up it, it's probably 20, 25 feet wide today.
But the access to the house is from Cross.
Right now, this house has a driveway that comes out, goes between this little space between these two lots, and goes out to Cross.
If I remember correctly, there was a discussion that cars going through unimproved Weber now, going to the side of that property. Maybe I was wrong, if I remember.
I believe you're right, Mr. Zabel. We discussed this
therefore-
property on the side of it, to be able, that they shouldn't,
And therefore, we wanted a Weber improved because this car's going in for the same yeshiva.
Yeah, it's yeshiva
Right,
there right now.
there's just a little, they're not using that for access now. They come out and access next to this house building.
I remember, but yeah, I was wrong.
More
But it's-
importantly, they don't want it.
And the reason-
Meaning, these people don't want Weber improved either,
Well, there's yeshiva there, why wouldn't they want Weber improved?
because they already have access. Well, I'll wait.
They have access to Cross Street. They don't need access to Weber. They can, if I'm coming in for an application, theoretically, for this lot, for some other improvement, I'm going to improve Spartan a little bit, maybe, partially, rather than build Weber completely. I would propose Spartan to be built. It's stone
Or
in the
make
back,
Weber
it's
half.
pavement.
Past that property.
But I have,
You make.
well, why would I waste money building, the point is, why would I build Weber 100% when I can do some improvements to Spartan, which is already there?
So I get your point. Now, is there any parking variance that was granted on for the school?
No, we have an excess of parking, if I remember correctly.
Is there a hall that's going to be rented
No,
out?
no hall, no rental, nothing.
What's eventually gonna happen with the lot one? It's owned by the yeshiva. It is owned, it's on the tax record, I just checked.
Yes, it is.
It's the same ownership.
Thank you.
528 lot.
It is under the control of Yossi Open, it's not under the control of the yeshiva as of today.
Was just sold today for this
If Adam
purpose?
Pepper's here, he can probably say that it's open.
Hold on a second, wait.
Do that.
Mr. Chairman, you have to recognize.
This is a bill.
We got everybody to testify.
Mr. Sable.
Yes. As far as I remember, at the end of our conversation at the last meeting, we've discussed that this is owned by the yeshiva, currently used by the same yeshiva. Somehow the car's parked there, and the board figured that it's the proper way for safety for the kids is to have sidewalk and finish that road.
But they're not, but this yeshiva operates independently. When this yeshiva is done, it will be its own yeshiva, and then this will,
We don't know.
but they,
We shall hope so.
Mr. Chairman, I think now might be a good point. At the outset of the meeting, the board secretary brought up the issue of res judicata. And I know the board's talking about issues that were decided, were not decided. This might be a good time for Mr. York, now that you have a flavor of what they're asking and why they're asking. Why is this not res judicata? Why is something different, changed? Why should the board revisit this? And first of all, why should it revisit, let alone, and then why should it change the decision from last time?
Right, again, I'm not actually asking you to change the decision. I'd love you to grant me the waiver, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I don't believe the board can require us to make off-track improvements.
You want a half-width?
I guess, in theory, if that's what the board wants to do. I'm not sure I see the purpose in the applicant ever having to do that. I don't know what good that serves anybody. They have half a street.
Who's the other party?
We just did that recently with that school on Oak
A
Street.
half-width is a conventional thing, and you're right, that way you don't have to do the full cost of the roadway. It's not an unusual thing for a board
It
to
is the same
require a
LLC
half-width
though.
improvement.
It's the same LLC ownership.
It's the same owner.
Same
Right,
owner.
but there's no subject application on the property
Yeah.
across the street, so there's
So we'll have to
no
wait.
harm to require that at this point.
Can we make it valid?
It would be the same, maybe the same LLC that would have to improve
All right,
the other
well,
half when they have their application.
I would have to look into that further. When you have a commonly owned property and you want to put a street to service the both based upon your site plan. But, right now, that's the board's decision. He would have to appeal it, or he would have to get some kind of relief. So now you're saying you don't think it's fair, you don't think it's right, you don't think it's justified. I'm not sure. I tend to, I'm leaning your way as far as the half width.
I don't think that's
But,
what
so
but
the-
that's not what their notice said at all. Their notice said specifically they're coming here for relief of a condition that was previously.
Right,
Well, that's what it
correct,
is.
that's what I'm here for.
That's what he's describing.
Okay, let's hear what Mr. Hadi has to say.
Mr. Who?
You have-
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Let's
I'm
speak
sorry.
with him. Do you have anything else
Open
to
to
say,
the
Mr.
public?
York, on this?
No.
Okay.
You all right? You want to sit down?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
board
please,
members.
You swear a firm testimony to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do. My name is William Hobday, 30 Schoolhouse Lane, Lakewood, New Jersey. In the testimony I heard, the Fairways has never said that we would agree to not improving the street. There was members of the Fairways, residents from the Fairways. There was a kind of a divided camp. So one of our members, Mr. Robinson, that testified at the last meeting, brought this before the board of directors. And his motion was that the board of directors support the township granting a waiver to avoid building the street or improving the street. Well, the motion failed 5-2. Therefore, the Fairways is dead set against asking for any waiver to not build. Our scenario is this. There's been much difficulty, years spent on this particular property, which is owned by the same individual, by the way. And our scenario at this point is that if the township believes that the street needs to be improved, we're not going to say, please don't improve it. We're not going to go along with this. We're saying, yes, if it needs to be improved, improve it. Don't grant a waiver for that. The other testimony I've heard says there is an owner on each side, and maybe you only have to develop half of it. Half of it is better than none of it. The idea is that I don't want to, at this point, after spending thousands and thousands of dollars over the years fighting this application, this is where we had the zone change from R40 to R40B, and then that was overturned by Judge Ford when it reverted back to R40, where this is permitted, and therefore we're suggesting that we would not be in favor, we, the board of directors. Now, I generally always speak for myself. In this case, as a member of the board of directors that made that decision to not ask for, not side with the applicant in avoiding building this roadway. And therefore, that's our opinion and our decision from the board that represents the members of the Fairways, that we would not be happy at all if this waiver was granted.
You would like to see Web Avenue improved?
Improved, yes.
That's what you guys
And that was just to understand, why would it make a difference to the Fairways if the street is improving?
Well, the point being is, after all the money we have spent, and that was the decision of, I believe, the township committee as well as the planning board, that roadway should be improved. And therefore, there's an expense associated with that. Now, it is my opinion that I would be unwilling, after the thousands and thousands of dollars that we spent, is to have applicant avoid an expense. And that might seem unreasonable to some, but it is reasonable to us because the scenario is whoever comes up, there was some concern about headlights, and previous meetings they talked about building a berm there so that the headlights wouldn't be into someone's residence. But at this time, we're not willing to say yes, that we would go along with the applicant's request for a waiver. We're not. We want the roadway constructed because the township wanted it, the planning board wanted it. We thought that they were coming back just to ask for that waiver that they didn't have to, and we were going to oppose that, saying it was the will and the decision of the Fairways that it should be approved.
They might be happy to reimburse you for all this money. It's cheaper than putting up the road.
Well, we didn't talk about anything like that, but my scenario is, what can it hurt? It goes from Cross Street up Weber Avenue.
It's a big expense, it doesn't go anywhere.
I'm sorry, I
The
understand.
question is that it's a big expense, it doesn't go anywhere.
Exactly, but the same property owner owns both sides of that area.
They have access to both of them from Cross Street. Right?
There's also environmental benefits to not having pavement.
Let me ask you, Mr. Abdi, are you finished?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
But, yeah, thank you.
We're happy to see you back here.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be back, I'm happy to be walking again and all those things. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Mr. Jackson.
And you talk much
Let me ask you-
louder and clearer now that I hit.
Yeah. Can we say that when if they ever come back for block 528 like one, they should have to do the whole road then?
Can we keep it?
Lot 8 encompasses that corner, so that wouldn't even apply to that.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like filling in the checkerboard with the sidewalks. If you want to see the road improved, you'd make them do half of it, and then when the other half comes in, make them do the
The
other.
only point is, I'm the first person that wants that, but over here doesn't go anywhere.
That part of the road can become eventually important. The back of the yeshiva now, but that part of road was
The
made.
road doesn't go anywhere.
It doesn't go, look, here's
Here it
the-
is.
I feel like the only thing it would benefit is that neighboring property, if it were to subdivide or build.
Ali, are you talking about this neighboring
Yeah.
property?
Hold on, we're having a free-for-all again, one at a time, or our record's going to.
If I can tell the board, like Ali just pointed out, if it's our position, we don't control this property. However, if we, or whoever this applicant is to ever come back before this board, they would agree to find a way, both these properties, to pave Weber Avenue if the board so decides.
Lots of luck.
Well, I mean, you can put it in the.
Find a
Put a
way.
bond
But,
halfway.
But the
Say
bond
that
just
again?
can't go on in perpetuity, they might never come in
No.
with the lot next door.
I mean, the only thing that road's gonna potentially service is the back of one of these two properties. And in order to use the back of one of those two properties, if they need that road, they're gonna put it in. It doesn't provide circulation for any other public or anyone that might want to cut through these properties for anywhere. It doesn't go anywhere. The only
Right.
thing it's gonna serve is these two blocks on either side of it.
Looking at the minutes from the last time we discussed this, we did agree that we wanted more on-site parking.
On
and
street-
that-
on street
and
parking.
the on-street parking would provide that.
Okay?
So that's
right
that's
there in
the
the
issue. I
minutes.
think you have everything you need in front of you. I've
Okay.
let the board
Just so
deliberate
the
and make a decision.
board's clear, we already said we don't need a variance for the parking around here. We have plenty of parking in the already approved part of the application. It had nothing to do with Weber Avenue.
No, we're looking through the minutes, the board agreed with a witness that came forward talking about on-street parking, that it was beneficial for the project to have the additional parking.
It may have been a neighbor talking
Sure,
about this.
right, I mean, you could, yeah, sure, I mean.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else from the public like to be heard on this application? Seeing no one, we'll close it to the public. I would ask for a motion.
You're the public. There is one witness. Yeah.
Okay, I'll open.
Sir, what is your relationship? Sir,
One second, first you have to identify yourself.
What is your relationship to the applicant?
None.
None? I'm sorry, I thought you were Mr. Ewart. I apologize. Please state your name.
Shmuel Rabinowitz, 800
Please
South
raise
Lake. Shmuel Rabinowitz, 800 South Lake Drive, Lakewood, New Jersey.
Do you swear affirm testimony you'll give before this board
I
will be the
affirm.
truth, the whole truth? You have to let me finish. You know the drill. And I apologize, I thought you were with Mr. York, that's why I was asking what your relationship to the applicant was. Because when someone goes through an attorney, you don't get a second bite at the apple, as we say. Please address the chairman of the board.
Yeah, I just have a very simple question, two things, actually. One is to you, Mr. Jackson, if I may, through the chair.
Yeah.
Mr. Hobday said he's representing a whole bunch of people. If I remember correctly, usually when people try to come here and say that they're representing one of themselves.
Well, he was here as a member of the board, and we had questions. The rules of evidence don't apply. We generally follow that, but sometimes we can relax those rules.
I'm happy to say that because here's my question. I have a lot that's near the fairways that actually. Yes,
Totally.
thank you.
Such a right in.
I have a lot that actually touches the fairways and it uses the road in the back to get there, the gravel road that they were speaking about.
Road?
I don't know the name of it is.
Yes.
Broad Street.
Broad Street, okay.
So if I understood from Mr. Hobday correctly, he wants this road approved, and the only reason other than the fact that he wants him to spend money, the applicant, I'm assuming that he wants to be able to get to Broad Street so Broad Street can be paved.
Right.
And actually, it's a benefit to me because I would like that road to be paved, slowly but surely to get to my lot. And the only reason I held back till now is because a lot of seniors were upset. And every time I came to visit my lot, they were screaming at me, don't get near here, we don't want anyone coming near here, even though it's a lot that I rightfully own and I have a right to go ahead and approve it. So my question is, if I may, because he represents the seniors, is he okay with paving this back road? Where is Mr. Hobday?
That's not relevant.
I think it's very relevant because the only purpose that I can see in improving this road is to get, other than the fact that you just wanted to spend money, is to get to Broad Street and to start improving this. And there is a reason, even though it's very far away, and there is a road that's paved over here, Spartan was the one?
Are you willing to chip in together?
I'll chip in Broad Street.
Sorry, where's your lot again, Mr. Ryan?
I can't see it on this map, but it's the end of Broad Street this way.
The end of Broad Street. North.
If you go down Spartan, you make a right turn.
And there's no other way next to your...
Well, I can go through Spartan, I can get down Spartan and go down Broad Street.
It goes all the way at the end?
Yeah.
Is there an entrance from that, from Spartan to the 5?
Spartan goes down, Spartan stops over here, the township actually put a gate. And when I crossed the gate, I was screamed at by a couple of seniors that I have no right to go here, and the township stopped it, which I'm a little bit confused. I mean, if they have a right to stop me from going to my property, but I do want to do something on my property eventually. Right now it's zoned.
Could you talk about what's back there on Sparta? How many lots are there?
There are no lots. I'm the only lot probably that could be developed other than the seniors that are facing it.
Okay.
And I'd like to do a commercial use there, which is what it's zoned for.
And you're gonna have the access will be all.
We'll come, right now, the access will be through Spartan,
How big is your property?
100 by 100.
So for your lot, which is the only lot that could be developed there, it doesn't make a difference.
Actually, I don't really need Weber, but now that Mr. Hobday said that he wants the roads, I'm
Yeah,
curious.
but that's not really part of this application.
What?
I mean, that's
No,
part
you
of
were
it's
my
not
road.
If it's an objection to this Weber Street, the real argument that I have is, being that it does bother the seniors, I think, and being that I know, or I'm telling you, and it's a fact, that I'm gonna be developing my lot, obviously I'm not leaving it there just to have grass, I don't see.
thought you liked making
I
progress.
don't see the reason to start making more and more roads and upsetting more and more people. I don't think Mr. Hobby knows what he's asking for. He's actually asking for more aggravation for his own people than he needs. There's gonna be a road developed over here, let's keep it to a minimum.
Okay, thank you.
Is Spartan wide enough to make a
Yeah, sure,
roadway?
it's paved already, it's actually, yeah.
It's good right away.
Anybody like to make a motion? Either way?
Yes.
Anybody would like to make a motion?
I'll make you know, I don't think I was here for the original, I wasn't here for the original application, so, you know, I'm relying on the minutes and the resolution, and it's clear to me that this was thoroughly discussed before, and I could see if they were asking for only half the road, but based on what the public said at the prior meeting, I'm going to make a motion to deny the request.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to deny.
Mr. Franklin,
And Mr.
seconds.
Franklin
Thank you.
seconds.
All right, so an affirmative vote is to go along with the motion, which is a denial. Mr. Franklin?
Yes.
Mr. Sable?
Yes.
Mr. Herzl?
No.
Mr. Renner?
No.
Mr. Isaacson?
No.
And Mr. Graffos?
Yes.
So the motion doesn't...
Your counsel's going.
I'm sorry, Mr. Meyer.
No.
No. So the motion does not pass. It's still open for a motion that would pass, right?
Right. That was
I
the
will make a
motion.
motion to approve, not approving this road.
So approve the waiver.
Fine.
To approve the waiver.
To approve the waiver.
Halfway or totally?
Totally.
Can we make them do that? I mean,
They don't have to build.
The motion is to say no road. The last motion was.
It's safety.
Last one
Getting
was to
kids
say
over there,
yes
a lot
or
of
no.
kids.
One
We know
second.
Right, and you voted against the road.
1 second, Mr. Jackson.
I voted,
Let's clarify this. There might be some
Yes,
confusion.
okay.
Mr. Hogan, wait a second, I want to make sure. The last motion was to deny their request, which would have meant they have to build a road. Like it was- That's what you wanted to vote?
yes, and I voted no to that because I don't know.
You didn't want to deny it.
I don't know that we can compel them to develop an entire road.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
That's why I voted no.
Okay, so.
Fair enough.
Okay.
So there is a motion to
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
deny.
I just
There's
wanted
a-
to clarify that because the positive, negative votes sometimes get confusing. Please do what you were about to.
There's a motion to approve the waiver.
I approve the waiver, but I have to go into the resolution that there's not gonna be any rented holes over here. I'm concerned about the parking.
Okay.
Is it already-
Eventually, if they ever develop this road, if they build that road.
What? You could vote against my.
Chairman.
All right, that's the motion. Do we have a second?
You can't
Sure,
put
you-
a requirement on an adjacent property owned by the same people based on this application.
That's correct. Is that what you were doing? I misunderstood that.
No, that's what was
The chairman
suggested, and
mentioned
Mr.
His
Renner
motion
said no.
is to approve, not approving the road, but they can't not use that for any simchas, any halls, they can't.
On the subject property. that's
That's on the
all.
property.
Correct.
Yeah, I just don't see where this road goes.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we have a second on that?
What's the motion now?
To approve the waiver with no rental of the hall on the property.
No road, no rentals. No
The
rentals.
reason why the
approve the
original
waiver.
road was put in the minutes, it shows that it was, in the resolution, it was put in to give additional parking.
Right.
They're saying that they meet the parking requirements with whatever they gave on site. So I want to make sure that they don't need additional parking. So therefore, I'm saying, as long as they're not going to use it, as long as they're not going to rent out the space to outside parties, I feel that we have sufficient parking on site, and I don't see where this road goes. So I'm making a motion to give a waiver.
Do we have a second?
Come on, one.
Somebody should always, out of respect, second it.
It's fine.
Mr. Meyer just seconded.
That's not true. If no one, don't, I'm sorry, Ellie.
Well, that's what the
I
mayor
didn't
told
say
me
that.
once. He said you
Oh,
should never
I
leave
thought-
somebody.
I
No,
thought
Angela
that-
said
No,
that.
no,
So
no,
it
no,
sounds silly, I thought.
No,
Good
the mayor
answer,
told me,
Angela.
out of respect, you should always at least give a second.
Well, that's-
You don't agree, you can't.
And then you can vote no, you know?
I'd rather have 5.
Yeah.
Okay, roll call.
All right,
Okay, the
so,
I thought
motion
that was Ally.
is, Mr. Jackson, let's just be clear. The motion is, they don't have to approve the road, but they cannot use for any outside catering, simchas, anything on the road. We
That's
don't
the
want any
motion.
more parking.
Okay.
And we have a motion on a second. Now, okay?
Mr. Franklin,
Yes.
Mr. Sable.
Thank you. Yes would mean that they don't have to.
Correct.
I'll say no.
Mr. Herzl,
Yes.
Mr. Renner,
yes.
Mr. Isaacson,
No.
Mr. Graffos,
No.
Mr. Meyer.
Yes.
4 yeses.
4 yeses.
Good.
So it's approved. So your waiver request is approved.
Thank you
With,
very much.
now,
Yes.
you can't rent out.
No problem.
The whole.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Thank you.
It's not a joke.
No more motions.
We do have 3 applications left. They are all anxious to be heard, and they all swear they can do it in 4 minutes.
4 minutes each?
Yes.
Performance together.
You want to continue going in order? I know the neighbors are all here on the next one, SB 2280. They have suffered through the night, and I'm really hoping that we'll hear them.
We've been dwindling all evening, and there's 3 of us left who are gonna have to go soon.
It's certainly going to take longer than the others, but neighbors are here.
I need to go.
You have to go.
Should we take a 5-minute break?
Take a 5-minute break.
Are we gonna have a party?
You're leaving?
No, she's coming.
Yeah, exactly.
We're taking a 5-minute recess so the members can have a break.
And will ours, will the tour links will be there?
And then we will do tour links when we return.
Thank you.
The others are the fastest. The last two were the fastest.
We weren't at a,
He gave up.
Remind us.
Anything not doing, not one of things. I've been bothered you once, so.
No one's bothering us.
Yes. Yeah.
No,
Some loans. Yeah, good. Well, hope you get back into business. So, miss you guys.
Yes. Say again? Yeah, oh, that's okay.
But I'm glad to hear it's working its way through.
When the applicant will come up and present their case, and then the chairman will say, are any members of the public interested in speaking?
Oh, yeah,
Then you can step forward, they'll swear you in, and you say whatever you'd like to say. No problem.
Is it raining?
Problems on it, none of them are charged. I was getting my car, I wanted to see, I don't know if I can put now there's like a counter, walks out, when I walk out,
Yeah, we roll after, we weren't sure if you wanted to first week, so we're she's dabbling, she's figuring it out. And I don't know what, I can cheer, you know, like, no, I'm not trying.
Must have gotten shot. I was doing the same thing. I was like, what is
It was a very straightforward.
I'll try.
We're not, whatever, then I can
No, I'm good. I'm good, yeah. Oh, was that mom? No, I'm good. I'd rather, unfortunately, we have two very good ones. And the neighbors are here, so I know, and I just feel bad for the others, but they would take her, I would never go there, but I don't know if we're able to do everything.
Usually go to this one. I made a joke about those special shows.
Well, that's like the only thing on the 10th right now. We can just not put anything else on. Okay. Well, we can't just not schedule after.
How you doing?
You may not have.
Yeah. I'm away in August, yeah. I'm away like the last like the first week in August, I think. I wrote it
And then also from the stairways, comes out there.
Six streets down there. You get a lot of
For a while. This is the question I have over
The engineer, he's terrible. If he would misquote me, I wanted to. I'm not very good at fighting criticism. And he was. And you were sitting there at the table, looking so lovely.
We can change again, I feel like we're here for 30 minutes. You wanna go out for a second?
No.
Okay, so let's go, do we have a quorum?
I said I would drop by and I never talked to him. You had to file out, thank you.
Oh, I forgot. I told Sarah that I forgot. But the file's always a set.
I was
We thought you were going to be fine with that. Yes. Well, the problem is, it's contingent upon a minor subdivision, which has not been progressed. It was made and then sat for a year, and now they told us to revive it, so the plans that they submitted a year ago are not the ones that match the property boundaries in the school plan. So they need to give us the correct minor subdivision. Then, correct, and since their subdivision is affecting the portion of the existing site that's already developed, they also need an amended site plan to prove that existing site is going to function even though they're chopping part of it off. So the delay with the school is getting the amended site plan subdivision. The board can hear them all together, but lines of the plan are the amended subdivision.
Existing building.
And then also the subdivision. And then they need to go we can do them all in the same meeting, but they need to be done in that order. We can't just take the school now. Right, the problem is they haven't prepared the amended site plan plans, and we have not reviewed the correct subdivision plans because they didn't so that's the delay. We're working towards the second public hearing date of July. If lines can get us plans in about 2 weeks, like July Oh, that one, yes. Okay, great, yes.
Calling the meeting back to order. Please be seated, we're quiet.
Wait, members of the public, please.
Please be quiet, it's very late.
We are going to continue with
Yeah, let's go straight.
SP 2280 for Tora Links. It's a major site plan for a school on 1301 Central Avenue. I'll let Terry go over submission waivers and
It's 4
variances.
minutes per.
Okay. Submission waivers quickly on this application. EIS, we support the waiver. A, there's no constraint for DEP mapping. Secondly, we have a tree protection management plan.
Okay, do we have a motion to go along with the engineer's recommendations? Move. You have a second?
What's what? Tree protection or whatever?
Waiver of EIS, we have a tree protection management plan.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Okay, please continue.
Okay, under zoning, page 3 of our letter, we have front yard setback variance with respect to the unapproved right-of-way.
Not covered by Medicare.
It's positive.
We'll rent it.
This is a full-service board, John. Minimum lot width variance is required, buffer relief, you have a mixture of existing, but you don't meet the horizontal standard, the board will have to act upon that. And also relief is necessary for the parking waiver, in terms of buffer, and then finally.
How much is required?
I'm sorry?
How much is required? 7.5 is required?
Would be 7.5 feet. I don't have the answer at hand for
20.
Well, it said 20 feet, that wasn't the parking, that was the perimeter buffer.
The buffer should be 20 feet, and it should not have parking in it.
The front.
You're not supposed to, it's a waiver. to park in the-
So it's a okay, it's a waiver for parking within the buffer itself. I believe that's it under variances and design waiver with respect to a road widening easement along the unimproved street. We'll have testimony on that, as well as a design waiver for improvement on the eastern side of the project, which we'll have testimony on.
Mr. Chairman, John Doyle, pleased and privileged to represent the applicant in this matter. It is central to the very nature of Lakewood and the community it is, and that is education. What is proposed is not your typical yeshiva, but something that follows the thought about Shuva, the return to the book, the guidance of young adult males to maybe make up for what they didn't have earlier in their life. The location is appropriately suited. It is, as Terry suggested, an unusual lot, thereby creating unavoidable variances. More specifically, we have a 75-foot frontage that we seek to develop where 90 feet is required. There's houses on either side. One of those houses is on a 75-foot lot. The other is the approved Shabbat. The application is not the first on this lot. There was a subdivision application that would have had the 40-foot paper street developed, which goes nowhere, connects nowhere, and doesn't do anything except require variances. I know the gentleman who built the house next to it had to get a variance because he was too close to this street that I don't think will ever be developed. With that said, and mindful of the time, I'd like to call Mr. Lyons to be sworn.
What street were you just talking about?
There's
This one here.
on the east side of the property, this is,
No name yet.
Has a name.
there's a paper street named Street,
How wide is that street?
40 feet.
40-foot right.
Okay. You have to be sworn in.
You swear affirm testimony given before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do. Glenn Lyons, professional engineer, professional family.
Who's testified before this board and whose qualifications have been recognized. Yes?
Yes,
You heard my opening, the facts at least are so far true.
correct.
Okay. With respect to the layout of the site and the variances, would you discuss that?
We're requesting, get that page. Number 2 under variances is a front yard setback from the paper street. We have 50 feet to the building, and it's 27, I believe it's in here, 26.67 to a patio. That happens to be in the front yard on the paper street side.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I identified at the beginning the nature of this program. I would like to interrupt Mr. Lyons for a moment to spend a couple minutes on the nature of it so it can be better understood and how it fits in on this particular site. Apologize. Rabbi?
Please raise your right hand. You affirm the testimony given before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Just state your name for the record, please.
Aaron Gruman,
Please spell your last name.
Gruman, 3 Pennington Road, East Windsor, New Jersey.
Did you rabbi this one?
I'm the director of the school.
Okay.
Rabbi, give the background of this school and your relationship with it.
It's not a traditional school, it's an outgrowth of our parent organization, Torah Links, which runs educational programs around the state. Okay. We've been running this particular program called Lakewood Fellowship for almost 10 years now, and it addresses students, mostly college undergrads and some graduate students from around the country, and more particularly from the East Coast, who, as council said, did not have a traditional or much of a Jewish background in terms of education or Jewish experience, and somehow in their college years have developed an interest in that. And so we provide programs that run from 1-week programs to summer programs and similar types of programs that combine religious instruction, also career training. We're currently starting tomorrow night a program which we call Lakewood Fellowship Intern Program, where students intern in businesses 9 to 5 during the work week, and nights and weekends we provide educational program. And the reason that this particular neighborhood is the most perfectly suited for this program is that in addition to the actual religious instruction, there's a tremendous amount of mentorship. And since we've been in this neighborhood for about 10 years, many of the families from the greater neighborhood, neighbors within a couple of blocks, 5 or 6 blocks, and beyond, have developed mentorship types of relationship with the students. Some of them are here in the audience, and some of them are all around the country today. And so since we'd like to foster that growth and that type of relationship, that's why this is a perfectly suited location for what we do. Again, it's not just as a traditional yeshiva in Lakewood might do, where they provide Jewish instruction and religious instruction. It's far broader than that, and so we have pre-med students or students who are starting off a medical career that have an opportunity to study with our program, but also intern at Hamed, the health facility, and also can be mentored by doctors that live in the area. And this is not in theory, this is in practice. This is what's been going on for the last 10 years. We're scattered currently in different parts of Lakewood, and kind of refer to ourselves as 2 men in a truck, running from here and from there, and sleeping here and being shuttled there. And the idea here, in addition to anything else aesthetically, is to consolidate under one building, one roof, so to speak, to be able to better provide for the students.
And that one building would be the architectural rendering that's in front of the board that I will note would be marked as A2, the plan being marked A1. How will that single structure, rather than the several disparate located around town, aid the mission and the function and the young men who go there?
Well, obviously it's on a very practical level, just in terms of the time and aggravation. I think even though I don't live in Lakewood, but I drive into Lakewood every day, and just moving from spot to spot can certainly add to the length of the day, even though the day is only 24 hours. Somehow it seems like it's a lot more than that when you have to do all that kind of travel. But more to the mission, as I've said before, being able to have the students in the neighborhood directly and specifically. Thank God these are students that are coming from very good schools from around the country. They are screened to make sure that they are appropriate match, and then we try to create a certain group dynamic every semester that we run this program, and that would certainly be aided by the fact that we're in one facility. And it certainly speaks to our mission of providing a well-rounded Jewish experience on all fronts by having it in one building in a neighborhood that supports it.
These young men are of at least college age?
Yeah, starting with usually the end of their freshman year, generally speaking.
What's the youngest young?
We go by college year, not by age, so I can't tell you an exact age, but typically somebody who finishes his freshman year would be when a student would may enroll, or older, but that would be the minimum.
You have a,
Meaning
they're going to be
19 or
doming
20.
on the facility.
Pardon me?
They're going to be doming in this village?
Yeah, yes, there'll be a residential facility on the second floor.
That's about age of 16, correct?
Not 16, 18, 19, 18, 19.
Would they typically drive to the school?
Generally speaking, they wouldn't. First of all, most of them are not so well employed as to be able to afford a car. And generally, most of the students that participate don't. Some of them do. And to the degree that it's needed for them to be at other places, we have 2 or 3 vans that we would take them to wherever it is that they have to go.
How many parking spaces do you do?
We have 53.
53?
In answer to the question you've asked all the other applicants, we don't ask for any parking variances.
I know you don't need parking variances, but the application is based on a regular school's type of parking requirement, I'm
Yeah,
assuming.
I was just saying, I didn't realize it was a dorm, it wasn't listed on the application to my knowledge. Do your parking calculations incorporate dormitory space?
The,
And was that part of the notice?
Everybody's parking out the car.
I note that Terry's report states an exclusively dorm room is on the 2nd floor, so
Okay,
clearly
so
the
Terry's
the plan and the submission showed that.
Thank you.
Okay. I think, you know, it has to be addressed how 53 parking spots are gonna be sufficient. It's not gonna impact this neighborhood. This is Central Avenue, and I understand, and I support this school, and I want you to be successful, but I think it's gonna have a tremendous negative impact, possibly, on Central Avenue neighborhood.
Let me take you through the parking calculations as they actually are. How many staff members would be there?
At the peak season, there would be 15 to 18.
With respect to, you mentioned shuttle buses, meaning taking these students to, into town or non-educational life requirements, how many vehicles would you have for that?
2 to 3 vans.
Given the fact that this program is existing, I'm sure you can answer the question, do they generally, your students, have their own car?
Generally not. There are some exceptions, I won't say none, but generally not. A small percentage of students, usually it depends on what the nature of their internship is. They may be some exceptions. Generally, they do not.
Are there school buses that are used for the site other than the 2 or 3 shuttle vehicles?
No, there are not.
So if I were to add the cars needed for staff, I didn't mention instructors, you have instructors beyond staff?
I included the regular instructors in that number. If there be an irregular situation where a guest lecturer came, it may add 1 or 2, because we don't generally have more than 1 or 2 guest lecturers at any given time.
So if I have 15 staff members, 3 shuttle buses, a couple of guest lecturers, that puts me at 20. Does the 53 spaces provide sufficient parking?
Sure.
Mr. Renaud, be more specific if there's anything else that.
No, I understand that the applicant's testimony is gonna be that everything's
Okay.
great.
How many students could you have at one given time?
Well,
What's the maximum?
The application for the dormitory would allow for a maximum of 75 beds. Typically, we've been between 40 and 50 in the current setup that we have.
Going on the maximum, you have 53 parking spaces and 20 unique for your staff, you're left with 33 parking spaces. So if everybody would have, like you have 50%, you have cars for 50% of your students.
We would not, that's from the student point of view, we certainly would not need that.
You would not need 50%.
No.
Of your students.
No.
Okay.
And that's based upon the actual experience of running the program?
Yes.
So,
And that's the maximum. That's why I asked them, what's the maximum?
understood.
so your application says that all you require is 6 parking spots for this application?
I believe that was based upon a classroom count of 1 per, and I think that is a bit light, and that's why I was more specific about the actual need being more in the 20 to 40 range.
Is the building going to be used all year round, or it's going to be used primarily between
spring semester and fall semester, during spring break, during winter break?
There are heavier usage periods, such as from the summertime, which in the college calendar is like 3.5 months, and during various breaks, as you've articulated. There is a minimal lighter use, but a use that during year-round, sometimes a student comes for a program and decides he wants to stay a little bit longer. Sometimes a student graduates and that has, some extra time on their
You
hands.
maxed it out at 75.
Yes.
And is there any on this building, any outside rentals for simple halls?
No.
It's strictly school function, no outside functions will be done in the building?
Not at all. As a matter of fact, what's important to understand the nature of the program is that we are trying to create as wholesome an environment as we can for students who didn't grow up with this type of background, and so therefore we try to keep the environment in one that would be no distractions and nothing that would create a negative experience for them in terms of neighborhood functions and simchas and things like that. That's not part of what we're trying to promote, and to the contrary.
Has there been any communication with the neighbors regarding, I'm concerned about the neighbors.
Beyond the 200-foot notice, I am aware that in dealing with the principal of the LLC that is with whom Taurus Links is associated, Michael Bauman, that between Mr. Bauman and others affiliated with the school, they have sought out various neighbors and spoke to them. I am aware that there is at least the presence of Mr. and Mrs. Locker and one other person that I think that I know are within the 200-foot area, and they might have some views that are not as favorable as an applicant would have. But yes, we have reached out in general, and Mr. Bauman, as well as his brother, both live within the 200-foot.
Are they going to be eating in the school
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
on a daily basis?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Let's continue.
Fine.
I just
Yeah.
had some quick questions.
Yeah.
What is the driveway to the left? What's there? It looks like
Let's
it's.
let Glenn continue.
Sorry.
I'm just trying, it looked like it was commercial.
The driveway to
On the
The
cover
single
sheet, it
proposed
looks like it
driveway.
might be
One
commercial
at a
on the
time.
cover sheet. Hold on.
I'm sorry, I didn't bring it.
There is a shul.
Left of the driveway, I was just curious if it was residential.
Left of the
or-
driveway,
There's
there's
a
a shul.
shul.
Yes. On this lot,
4602, there is a shul on that lot.
And they use the same parking lot?
No, they have
No,
their own.
they have their own parking lot, we have our own parking.
They can't use that. It's a
Open
private
out.
property.
Well, right now,
Open
this
and
lot
paved now.
this lot currently is occupied by a single-family house.
There is a house on the site that will be demolished, assuming, with the hope that the application is granted.
There's one house on the whole property?
Yes, this is a large L-shaped property. There is one house that sits on, what's the front part of the parking lot. The back is all empty. My recollection from years back is that the owner had a tree service, and they used the paper street to get to the back of their property with their tree clearing equipment, that type of thing. But it's just a recollection I have from years back. I
So,
could be wrong.
if this would be a subdivision today, would this be a flag lot?
No, it's already covered.
It-
It's already-
It would be a new subdivision.
It looks like a flag, but
It's not like that, the frontage.
But under the old flag lot ordinance, the staff had to be at least had to be no more than 25 feet, I think, and this is 75 feet, so no.
Just looks like it because the parking lot is so
Yeah.
wide
Yeah.
along the staff.
Okay, the lines, continue. Let's go.
Okay, second variance we have is, as Mr. Doyle pointed out, the existing portion of the property we're using for that has the parking. That's 75 feet wide, where 90 feet is required. That's an existing condition.
It can't be changed, we've got structures on each side, correct?
Correct. There's uses on either side. If we acquired property from either of them, they would become non-conform. The lot to the east or the right side is already non-conforming. If we took property from the other side, that lot would then become.
So that's a hardship.
So that'd be a hardship. Terry actually already discussed, we're requesting a buffer waiver along the parking lot. We're proposing white vinyl fences on both sides and a row of white pines. We're also requesting white pines along the back of the, proposing a row of white pines across the back of the property, but also buffer.
The circulation path is the minimum that would be appropriate in 24 feet?
Yes.
The depth of the parking stalls on each side of it are what would be the minimum appropriate, which is 18 feet. I've just used up 60 feet. We have 75, so that's how we get to the 7.5.
Correct.
But to assist with that being narrower than it might otherwise be desired, we do have a 6-foot vinyl fence. We do have trees right along, about 8-10 feet on center, 6 feet at planting growth that grow quickly.
Yes.
We do need a variance from the structure to the paper street.
Yes, that was the first variance in Terry's letter. Actually, that's to the porch. To the building, we have 50 feet from the, actually 55 feet from the paper street, and we have 50 feet after the dedication or the 5-foot right-of-way widening.
Usually you measure a porch to the, or a structure to the closest line where there's property. That would be our setback plus the 40 feet.
Correct.
Okay.
That's, what is that, a porch on the ground?
It's raised slightly up.
Is it 3 feet below the, I know there's if it's below the grade of the house, then doesn't it count it?
No, that's not the case anymore.
That's not the case?
When the ordinance was revised, that went out. All setbacks are measured to porches and
No matter
and
how
decks.
low it is.
Doesn't matter.
But that setback is 27 feet from the paper street.
Paper street.
But
And then
from the
there's-
nearest home, it's 67 feet.
The nearest property line, which is the rear property lines of the fronts on Circle Drive, that's an additional 40 feet. So we're 67 feet from the nearest property line.
There was an approval somewhere in the area, and maybe Mr. Levin could vote on it, for Chabad. Is that right in front or on the side?
It's next door to.
That's immediately west of us.
It's over here.
And I believe that neighbor is or was, oh, he's still here.
We had testimony then, you're gonna have Fabringans.
Hey Glenn, how wide is White Pines going down that border there? They blossom out pretty wide. They'll be hanging over the cars.
What's right in front?
So
We'll take any recommendations. Yeah, we can change it to something a little more comfortable.
Yeah, something more compact.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
How wide is the car? A general car? What do you
6
think?
feet.
6 with the mirrors?
Roughly.
Yeah, roughly, I don't think it's more than 6 feet.
The 9-foot width is a typical width.
That's a parking space.
That's a
Okay,
parking.
You asked how wide a car is. The car's about 5
Cars
feet.
going in and out, we have like, where is it, 24?
24 feet, which is normal traffic aisle.
9 is 18, we have like 6 inches to maneuver it.
No, you have, no. The car itself is about 6 feet. And it's in 2 cars, 12, in a 24-foot aisle. Every access aisle you drive through, Home Depot, ShopRite, anywhere else, the minimum is 24 feet.
And that's for going back and forth.
Correct, that allows two-way traffic.
It's the minimum.
Okay.
So we're only at-
But typically that's on a large commercial site,
Right,
and it works.
it works there.
Okay, please continue.
Thank you.
Let me see, I don't want
So
to.
is there anything in the report that you cannot agree with?
No, I think the rabbi discussed parking, number of students, the dormitories, architectural.
There's areas that are marked, we need to improve or do something in compliance, particularly items 15, 16, 17, we acknowledge those. There's items regarding the county, and we will have to get county planning board approval. The items mentioned in 18, we will do, the county is 19 and 20, we will go there, and the report notes in paragraphs 21 that lighting plan conforms. 22 notes that we have no sign identification. We believe that those people who are coming here are students who will come regularly and will know where it is. And if we put a sign where it has to be, nobody would see it anyway, and we don't want to slow traffic down on Central.
Are there sidewalks on the front of Central?
We're providing sidewalks.
We're providing sidewalks. And Mr. Grumman, Brother Grumman, sorry. You're not gonna have any minyanim over there, it's not open to the public for minyanim, for simchas, for nothing.
It's not open for simchas, I mean.
And you're not gonna have minyanim the whole day, people coming and going, making this,
No, it's.
it's not a regular shul, it's just strictly for your school.
It's designed for our students, and staff.
No, because if it's open to the public and people will be coming and going for making, to pray over there, then we need more parking. You have to.
Yeah, no, it's not.
It's not open to the public in that sense.
No minion factories, right?
Not a minion factory.
What time is Shachar typical in your current situation? If there is.
We don't, right now,
That's what I was gonna
please don't
say.
tell anybody, but we don't really offer shabbos right now. We do have Ma'ariv, and, like I said, a lot of the students that are participating have not fully embraced all the practices, so we tend to have a more relaxed schedule.
But the main thing is that it's not open to the public, we're not gonna utilize it for the public, strictly for the school.
Correct.
Is there any purpose to the school other than education?
Education, career growth, which could be part of education, or you could look at it as alongside education.
Is there another shul in the area that people use? I don't know the area very well. Is there another major shul?
Yeah.
Except Rabat, another one.
Yeah.
Now?
It's 3 more floors down across that
But
street.
don't scream. You have your chance, you have your chance.
There's many in the area.
Okay, thank you.
There's about 6 in the 4-block radius.
Sufficient?
Okay. Any board members have any questions? Okay. I would open it to the public. Anyone?
Dr. Roy.
He's a witness for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Daniel Roth. You affirm the testimony you'll give before this board with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I affirm.
Doctor, you're a medical doctor, more particularly an ophthalmologist with a practice in this area. You live in Lakewood, and you're familiar with the school.
Very familiar. I moved to Lakewood in 2000. I've been involved in Jewish outreach since, in many different cities and campuses, whether Yale campus, in Memphis, in Florida, in Cleveland, many cities I lived in, and been involved in college student education, Jewish education. When I came to Lakewood and we started this program, I was involved from its inception. Actually, in 2013, one of the reasons I chose to move to this neighborhood was specifically because the epicenter of Torah Link's Jewish education was in this neighborhood around Glen and Central, where there was a tremendous interest of the community members, and many of the rabbis involved, or some of the rabbis involved, lived there, and the programs would happen there, but it was always haphazard going from house to house. And fortunately, with my home and other homes, we've been able to do a lot of education, but I want to emphasize to the board that this is a little bit different. It's not a shul and it's not a school. This is an opportunity to share the beauty of what we believe Judaism has to offer to college students who didn't, like Rabbi Grumman said, have that exposure in their youth, to be able to share with them in a non-pushy, open way where there's communication between mentors, families around the community, where they go into their homes, but that they have a place. Because right now I've been spending the past week trying to find homes to place students, literally calling back and forth because there's no place for them, and they're being housed from Wednesday till Sunday, and it's a big drain. To have a place for them, they'll still interact with community members, invited for Shabbos meals and things like that, but there's a core center for them to be able to have educational programs and mentoring. When you ask about minyanim, they're not at a stage where they're davening regularly. Some of them a little bit, but it's not a. They're learning about their heritage. They're learning about Judaism. They have interactions with different people, And the
I'm
beauty
talking
of
about
this.
them, I don't want it to be open to the public.
Right,
So
and it's, that's what I'm saying, it's not open to the public, and it's a different flavor than what the public are looking for. The public are looking for shuls and bati midrashim. These students are looking for, short, small one-on-one and small group educational interaction. It would never expand, it is not intended to expand to be a big school with mass institution. The whole goal is to teach people and then graduate them to other institutions so that they can then be mainstream, if they will be. The main objective is for them to go on to other yeshivas, other educations, be part of a different shul. Because this is a focused element for them, and we're not interested, and the school has no intention of being disruptive. There's an intention to have plenty of parking so that it can be accommodated within that property and not be like a big place where people are coming and going. I feel very fortunate to be part of this program. I feel the community has gained a lot by their involvement. All the people who from Lakewood we bring in, they're inspired and the students are inspired, and I think it enhances both the Lakewood community that exists, and it's an opportunity for people to, that there's no other institute or place like this in Lakewood that offers these kind of educational services, and I think that in that neighborhood, this is where it started, and this is where the people have that interest, and this is where we want to be able to go.
Thank you.
Dr. Hoffman, just a quick question. So it sounds like you're involved, and
Yes.
and you live in the neighborhood. Are you concerned as being the resident of the neighborhood in the parking?
I'm actually not concerned at all, because there's so many other school yeshivas and bati midrashim, like there's Chabad Chaniche, Columbus, Central Court, plenty of yeshivas, and
this will not be used?
This will not be used as
Okay,
one of
so
those
that's it.
services.
Okay, thank you.
You're a mentor.
I am a mentor, and I live less than a half a mile, like around 0.7 miles away, and I work with the students regularly. And they're a mature group of students. They're usually 18 to 25 or older. They're developing their careers, thinking about things. They're not a wild college group of kids. These are mature, thinking people who want to learn about their Judaism.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public?
I have two students, but in the interest of
Interest of going a half hour.
moving quickly.
4 minutes.
Okay.
We'll open to the public.
Thank you.
Anybody, please come forward.
Do you want both of us together?
You're
Myself and
not
I
talking
believe
together.
Mr. Hobday's
Mr. Hobday's
up
first. Okay, you can come wait a minute.
You swear to affirm testimony to give before this board with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Your name and address?
William Hobday, 30 Schoolhouse Lane, Lakewood, New Jersey. I have to commend Mr. Doyle, the rabbi, the doctor. This was so well presented, so well thought out. It will be an asset to the community. God bless. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, please come forward. Please state your name for the record. and-
Avi Locker, Rivki Locker, 1281 Central Avenue, Lot 50.
Please spell your name.
L-O-C-K-E-R.
Okay, and
What was that, L-O what?
C-K-E-R.
Please raise your right hands. Do you affirm the testimony will give before this board with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
What was your lot number?
50.
The only thing, one at a time.
Sure. Rivki.
Okay, so I guess I'll start by saying that I very much respect the cause. We would love to have students over, mentor students, be involved in the program in any way possible. But we are extremely concerned when I look at that, with that parking lot in front. Honestly, the first thing that went through my head when I saw that is I think about my son, who was crossing Central Avenue at night, getting off of his school bus, my daughter, my 8-year-old, who's walking down Central Avenue, and the traffic and safety concerns that will bring to my neighborhood are extremely concerning. Besides for the traffic and the safety issues, I also think there's a quality of life compromise. We bought our home in a residential area 17 years ago. We expected it to be kept as a residential area with, this board enforcing the laws around our space and keeping our home safe and residential. And it's a frightening thought to me to think about a building like that with all that parking, and I know there's some debate whether it's 15 or 21 or 23 cars, but that amount of traffic on Central Avenue with my small children and the quality of life issues are very concerning.
I would add a little more that, first of all, the variances, in general, the building itself, obviously, is concerning with that amount of people, and I understand if it's by the law, it's allowed, and it's true, I definitely support it. I've done a lot of care of myself. However, The variances are basically saying that the amount that's allowed, we're pushing it even further. So now we're talking about possibly 100 people. I'm sure everybody's telling the truth about how many cars they're expecting, how many people they're expecting. There could be expansion, there could be more cars than are expected. They're already saying there could be more variances. They already even said that's what it says on the paper. We are very safety conscious, and we fought for, when there was no sidewalk, for being able to get a bus stop by the house, because we don't want to walk on Central Avenue. It's a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. People go 50, 45 or 50. And so, I'm concerned about the safety, the number of people, the traffic, which is constantly getting bigger, and the quality of life. So, yeah.
Thank you.
To your point,
Yeah.
it's a variance-free application, so really, there's really not much we could do. Is there anything that they could do to enhance the application to make it better for you?
I think one thing that I would say is stick within the zoning laws, because the zoning laws were there to keep the neighbors, so whatever the distance is that is normally allowed.
Speak to the use?
What's that?
I think she has a concern with the use that it's not residential. Do you want to speak to that?
Sorry, just to clarify, I wasn't talking about that. I know that that's allowed, and I appreciate that there are shuls in our neighborhood that we ourselves utilize, which, maybe otherwise wouldn't be allowed. I wasn't talking about that. I was talking more about the space. Like my husband Avi said, it's, encroaching further on our space than would normally be allowed. So I think if it could be done without encroaching on that space, and, that massive parking lot in front to me says cars with potential college kids pulling out at 60 miles an hour. It says to me, I'm trying to get out of my driveway and I can't pull out. It says my kids are walking home and crossing Central Avenue alone at night, and it's a frightening thought. So.
Sorry, and I wanted to add one more thing I've got to mention. Often the case, even though Central, there's no parking allowed on Central, at least in our area, or the foreseeable distance. Often what happens is when there's overload of cars, people do park on Central, and I can tell you, getting out onto Central Avenue, where cars are going 50 miles an hour, if there's cars parking there, it's a real problem. So I'm a little bit concerned, even though with the parking there, if there's overload of people just coming and want to park around the corner or down the block or whatever it is, I'm a little bit concerned about that, so that's...
And we did have other neighbors here who asked me to say that they were here. One is and they had to go on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I might, two questions. One, Mr. Renner asked of us before, did we reach out to the neighbors? I am advised, tell me if I was rightly advised, that somebody associated with the application did reach out to you previously.
About 3 or 4 days ago, I got a phone call from one of the people involved. Before that, I didn't know anything about the building except the variance that I got. So it was just a few days ago, and that's about it. I didn't have, I got some details, but not much. I didn't know what the building looked like. Now I kind of looked at it, and it's a little more frightening.
I made a statement at the beginning, and I noticed Mrs. Locker said that we're not living up to the law because we're looking for variances.
Yes.
There was a variance required for you to build your house, was there not?
That has
Yeah.
no
Yeah,
relevance
yeah.
whatsoever. Excuse me. That has absolutely no relevance.
Mr.
I
have a
asked,
question.
no questions.
Can we restrict right in or right out on Central Avenue? How do you feel about that? Because Central is very busy, and I know people do go 50 miles an hour down Central. Mr. Renner, what's...
That would be a county question, and then whatever the county says we'll have to do.
But then it would be on the street, but then it would be on the street? Is that what? No.
Question, Chairman,
Yeah,
for the applicant professionals. This section of Central, is this county?
Yes.
So county has to rule on what the access is, whether it's full access, right turn in, right turn out.
Correct, and it's based on the traffic report.
Yeah, but we could
restrict it. We can restrict it.
You can provide recommendations, but
We could approve it subject to.
You can approve it subject to.
Right.
Okay, I do think, my personal opinion, it should be a right in, right out.
Is there any fencing that you're not getting? You're providing fencing? I just want to make.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, we have whatever fences. I don't think we would be looking for additional, or I don't know if you're asking us, like our fences we wouldn't want more fencing as a result of this. Our whole backyard is fenced in, and we can't fence in our front yard because it's not practical given the layout of the front.
Okay,
What is your opinion about this street, the no name street?
Well, that's borders on our house.
Is that gonna help or not help?
It doesn't really make a difference. I think a realtor might say it would increase the property value because we could technically put an entrance to our property from that street rather than from Central, but we're not going to do that because we just did an extension and we're not looking for for that. So my concern about making that into a street, especially, I don't know how you feel about it, we didn't discuss it, but especially given that they're putting all these college kids there, if that becomes a street, then that becomes another dangerous spot that my kids could potentially,
And that's the corner where they wait for the bus.
and they wait there and,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the public would like to be heard, please come forward.
Shmuel Rabinowitz, 800
The
South Lake
testimony to
Road.
give before the board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Hi, from.
You own a piece of
I
property here,
am
too?
the president of Chabad.
You own a piece of property?
I'm a president. It's a nonprofit organization, so I know people that own it. I actually have a question for you first.
I'm not
Can I speak on behalf?
I'm not here to get, go ahead.
No?
What
Can
do
I
you
speak
got?
on behalf of the 40 members?
Oh, okay.
I'm the president.
That's
I'm just having fun. Sorry.
Make it fast, it's very late.
First of all, I don't want to take away anything that the neighbors say. They live there, so obviously to them it's the most important thing, any objection that they have. I just wanted to point out a few issues that they brought up and things, because I use the shul that often, and obviously I know what's going on in the
Are you
neighborhood.
objecting or you're for?
I'm a for.
Okay.
I'm for, and I want to discuss a few of the issues that they discussed, namely the parking, because if I understand correctly, that's the only issue that we have over here that even requires a variance. The parking right now, as it is, for the first half part of it, it borders with Chabad on one side, which I don't see. I mean, I know that there's a rule for a buffer, but it doesn't really, I know legally it's there, but I don't think it makes any sense whatsoever to us, obviously. It wouldn't really it wouldn't hurt us in any way, the parking. The property on the other side, if I'm not mistaken, is being used as an office now. And I'm not going to get into the issue of whether or not they can or can't use it, but again, it's not a house, so.
That's in between the
In
parking lot.
between Locker and
Mrs.
the parking
Locker
lot,
house?
correct.
Okay.
So I just want to discuss those issues with the buffer. As far as
It's a
people,
residential use right now, unless they had a change of use on it.
I'm giving you the reality. I'm not going, I'm stopping right there.
Like I said, it's residential.
It was residential.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm from 56.
And please,
I'm
please,
sorry, wait,
please
before-
don't scream.
Before we have you on the record, we need to have you swear you in, if you could just wait a minute, thank you.
But that doesn't mean we have to swear you.
Okay, I will.
I just asked what it's being used for.
Mr.
I said nobody sleeps in it, so it's not being used as a home, as far as.
Okay.
As far as the danger and as we're talking about cars and what could happen, the reality today is that a lot of people park on the street. I think the fact that this application is providing way more parking than they actually need, if anything, it will relieve Central Avenue from cars that park on the street. And would help it out. It would help Chabad, obviously, but it should help the neighbors. And again, not that I'm taking away from the concerns of anybody that doesn't want to have buildings and permitted uses near their house to create that much traffic, but if anything, it should relieve cars from parking on the street as opposed to creating more traffic.
Okay, thank you.
And one last thing that I wanted to mention, if they went ahead and they used their property properly, they would be paving, and most probably the most logical way to use this is to have the no-name street as a drive-in and the other way to drive out. I don't see that as a benefit to any of the neighbors on this side. I think this is the most sensitive, neighbor-sensitive way of developing it because most of the parking is put on this side, which is commercial use, as opposed to putting it as residential.
No problem. Okay, I understand.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I was, it's almost 10 o'clock and I was kidding before. Don't hesitate to get up if you want to say anything.
Yes, I want to say something.
Yeah, please state your name for the record.
Yes. My name is Ines Terbuido, and I'm here with my husband.
I'm sorry,
Can you
please.
spell it
Please
for us?
spell
It's
your name.
hard, yes. It's STAROVOYTOV.
Thank you.
And
Just
the
like it
first name
sounds.
is Ina. Yeah, it's Star. It's
Ina,
enough.
I-N-A.
I-N-N-A.
Thank you.
And my husband Valentin is here also, yes.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you will give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Okay, please proceed.
Dear Chairman and dear board members, because I'm not speaking in front of the public very often, this is why I put everything in my letter, and I will try to be very quick. As the neighbors of this proposed development,
Where do
we
you
are
live
from
again?
lot 56, where this
Lot 56?
street, no, on a circle, yes. Where this paper street end, it's a part of our property,
Okay.
and the half of the building also.
Okay.
I want to also testify that neighbors, our neighbor, it's a residential, it's
Okay.
not a office.
Okay, no problem.
What I'm trying to say also is that before it was a statement that all neighbors were notified. No, we just got a letter that this will be hearing. We never heard about this project. Anyway, we have reviewed the publicly available planning documents and have numerous concerns about the variances being requested in order to develop this property and how it may affect our own property. We request that the board take our concern into consideration before allowing any variances approval for this development project. Our area consists mostly on one-story single-family homes. And we purchased our property along Circle Place, it was 23 years ago, specifically because it is a dead-end street, that it's quiet, limited in traffic, and set back from the noisy main road named Central Avenue. The project as proposed threatened to compromise our quality of life and environment, and requested variances that will bring construction activities and the newly developed school in very close proximity to our home and personal space. In particular, we are concerned about the following: close proximity of construction activity and impervious surfaces and stormwater drainage post-construction to our domestic water well and septic tank. Increased noise from 70-plus students and vehicle traffic around the new facility. Increased noise from Central Avenue after removal of existing vegetation. Request that proposed tree buffer planning along the eastern side of project be mandatory. Location of trash compactor located in close proximity to our and other residential.
I have to
Yes?
interrupt you, I apologize.
Excuse me.
We have a technical issue.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry too.
Mhm.
The camera, the board secretary advises me, is programmed to go off at 10 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, we have no record.
Okay.
So we have to decide what we're doing in the next
If
1
board
minute.
not
30 seconds.
object, I can leave my letter.
No, I'm not
to
trying
you.
to stop you. We have to
I
make
think you need to
announcements.
make whatever announcement you're gonna make in the next 60
Yeah.
seconds.
Yeah,
So we're gonna have to
you're
carry.
gonna have to
Next
stop
time,
it.
there's nothing you don't have to do.
Does anybody else except for her wants to speak?
Looks
Anyone
like-
what?
Doesn't
Anybody else
matter,
have-
unless
Looks
you
like
make a
nobody.
motion
I'm the last
20
one.
seconds ago. you're
I'm the
done.
last one.
We're going to have to come back for this, and you come back. Can you come back?
If you.
I don't want you to feel rushed or like you were shut off, but we haven't